Hello, hello. Oh, what's been going on? Let me get my comments here. Short stream again. It's probably not going to be short. Um, every time I start, I've always got to have some. And so today I put in the wrong starting time as about 15 minutes early. So here we are. So something has to go wrong every time. Um, and so um Hello from South Dakota. I have been to South Dakota, but it was when I was about 16 years old. I passed through and um went to Wall and all of that. I don't know if you guys ever been to Wall Drug or South Dakota, but man oh man. But it's beautiful, beautiful place. Saw some buffalo, passed through the Badlands. It was nice. It was nice stuff. Um Preston, what are your next theory videos going to be about? So, um, I am going to be doing a video on what hatches dragons, and I'm going to be doing a video. Um, I'm going to do a video on on an apology of Damon, like taking Fire and Blood and taking the most apologetic perspective on Damon to actually, show him as a hero, just as because the show definitely went the route of villain for Damon, and the text Fire and Blood is more ambiguous on what Damon has did. So I kind of feel like people need to see, well, from a different perspective, like Damon could actually be considered like a great guy, and so that's kind of the idea. But that's what I have planned. Those two, the dragon hatching one and the Damon one, um, both of them I have not gotten very far on. I've done a tiny bit of the script to both of them, but I need to first put out part two of my full season review and things like that. So, um, what do you make of Germ claiming he has 500 to go? Baloney or a message to fans that he's still far off? I talked about this a bit with Carmine, and I know that Carmine was going to he wanted to join the stream and talk about this, but we'll talk about it. Um, he We'll probably talk about it again when Carmine comes on. So I don't think him saying 500 pages is too different from what he's been saying for the past few weeks. What's very odd about the past few weeks is that he's been so forthright with the page count, which he hasn't been for for a decade. Um, and I mean, the last time he really told us how far he was along was at the very, very beginning when he said he was 25% done, which is, as I said in my video on his progress, it's kind of the leftover material from Dance. And so he said nothing on page counts all the way until now, and then all of a sudden he's been going on multiple outlets and saying he's 75% done. And so when he says 500 pages, now the actual quote, he says that he's 400 to 500 pages away, and he's written 1,100 to 1,200 pages, which, being generous to the 75% figure is, you're in the ballpark. Because, if you say, okay, let's say if he's done 1,200 and he's got 400 away, that's 1,600 manuscript pages, and he's three quarters. So he's being truthful there, but then he's giving some leeway and saying, well, maybe it's actually the end state. He only has 1,100, and the end state is 1,600. Then it's closer to like the two thirds realm. And so people made there's been a lot of talk about this 400 or 500 page figure, but it's just kind of the same thing he said before, just with a little more leeway, saying, well, maybe I'm not actually 75% done. Maybe I'm two-thirds done. But it's in the same ballpark. When some people were like, "Oh, did Preston hit the number when George said he was 75% away?" And because my video essentially said he was 2/3, and people are like, "Well, there's a couple more months, so." The difference between like 67% and 75%, say he got a couple more percentage. Like Preston was off like 6%, but George also exaggerates and things like this. We also have to remember that George rewrites a lot. I'm not saying when he says he rewrites a chapter, he doesn't literally take the entire chapter and throw it in the trash and like start again. But he'll start writing and then he'll grab hunks and paragraphs and copy and paste and reshuffle. So it's a little disingenuous for people to say like, "Oh, he rewrites." Well, he doesn't like rewrite from scratch. He doesn't just completely trash stuff. I mean, occasionally he completely trashes stuff, like Tyrion talking to the Shrouded Lord was completely trashed, and we'll likely never see it. Or like, but even when you say like, "Oh, he wrote an entire prologue from the perspective of Rosie," well, he did, but still, like 2/3 of that are paragraphs that he's copying and pasting from other places. That it's still the same information. It's just reshuffled. So, but yeah, there's a lot. But if I'm really talking about like, say he's 400 to 500 pages away, and say we're super generous and say he's 400 pages away. I think that's at minimum. That would take him 2 years to write that, and then it would take a year for him to clean the book. And I would say that's like the rosiest situation. So like, and when I say clean the book, I mean like he's going to have way too much information. He's going to have to like tighten it. He's going to go through it and place Easter eggs, edit, things like that. That actually takes a fair bit of time for him. We know that like Dance took about a year for him to clean it, before it was really ready. And so yeah, I mean, best case scenario, we're talking like end of 2025. That's best case scenario. I just can't see. That's pretty optimistic for me to say, "Oh, well, maybe it's coming." Because I think somebody pointed out to me that like a year ago, I said, "Look, if we don't get an announcement date by the end of 2022, like I just don't think it's happening at all." And so for me to be like, "Okay, fine, I'll allow for a 2025 like possibility right now for Winds of Winter," but that's about it, Thanks for the great content over the year. Thank you. Hello from Tasmania. Well, so Tasmania is kind of funny to an Australian. I'm sure there's lots of things about Tasmania that are interesting, but like to an American, the only thing we kind of hear about Tasmania are the Tasmanian devils and the strange like contagious cancer that Tasmanian devils have, which is odd. Like normally we don't think of cancer as being contagious. Like, if your friend has brain cancer, it's not like, you hanging out with him will give you brain cancer. But I think like Tasmanian devils developed an actual like contagious cancer, which is a kind of crazy little thing. But I'm sure there's much more to Tasmania than that, but it's kind of like all like non-Australians think about Tasmania as Tasmanian devils. I got into Amherst, early decision. Where did you go to college? Just out of curiosity. Good job on Amherst. Amherst is an incredible school. I went to University of Chicago. So Amherst is it's harder to get into than U of C. But yeah, the early decision too. Enjoy your time in New England. I'm sure it'll be everybody that my wife went to college in New England, and they really pound into you that it's just like the nicest place to live up there. Even though I've actually I suppose I visited I visited Vermont with my wife, but I've never really actually spent much time up there. Like I've been to Boston like twice. I've never been to Maine um, but that's about it. And hello from Argentina. The Argentina I have spent some time in. I spent about a month in Argentina in 2001. And to an Argentinian, you know how funny that is. That I spent 2001 there. I had bought a ticket after 9/11 because no one was flying anywhere, and it was so cheap to fly to Argentina. It was like a $300 round trip. It was crazy. And then the country fell apart into a financial crisis. When I arrived, the peso was 1 to 1 with the dollar, and when I left, it was 4 to 1. So my vacation like started out rather expensive and ended up very very cheap. But all the banks were closed. There were like protests and constantly it was a crazy crazy time actually. But I'm so happy I went. The things I saw when I was there, like I went to a protest uh in Buenos Aires, and you imagine this, like first of all, like if you've ever been in a rally or a protest, like that's exciting by itself, but it's all these people like banging pots and pans, old ladies, young people, and then there's just this like circle of motorcycles like going around the crowd, like through the crowd, like people on motorcycles, like just, and then everybody's flying the Argentinian flag, which is flag waving in Latin America is more like it can be used to protest government versus like in America where we kind of think of the American flag as conformity to government. In Latin America, you can use the flag as protest to government. So there's a lot of flag waving, people climbing the statues, a lot of people just making out, just like in the middle of the protest, everybody making out. Um, it was nuts. And then we got tear gas and everybody had to leave. But it was the first and only time I've ever been tear gassed. So great times, Argentina. But we left to Brazil, and then I had to go back to to get a flight out. But have I ever watched Deadwood? No, I never did watch Deadwood. I understand that there's some people that um, really enjoyed that. But yeah, um, Preston nailed his prediction, basically 2/3. He still has chapters to rewrite, he said. So no way he's 75%. Yeah, these percentages are tough to actually like uh, um, really work out. But like I say, I think that he's probably 3 years away from a release. Are you still doing overanalyzing? I love that one. Yes, I'm still doing overanalyzing. In fact, I released a overanalyzing last week to show people that I was still doing it. And then some people got angry that I released an overanalyzing before I did my my second part of my full season review. So, but yes, I really enjoy the overanalyzing series. I'm hoping to get back into it. In fact, I'm looking at my full season review as like something I'm just like getting through in order to get back to overanalyzing because I'm really enjoying it right now. Um, what, if any, new characters are you interested in seeing in House of the Dragon season 2? For me, it's either Nettles or Bloody Ben. I'm most excited about the Dragon Seeds, so I'm really excited to see Nettles, Ulf the White, Hugh the Hammer, and that's the number one for me. I'm most looking forward to the trials of people trying to ride dragons and how they're going to show that, how they're going to show people getting burned up. Like, I wonder if it's just going to be a montage, or if they're going to spend a lot of like serious time. I'm also very interested in seeing Blood and Cheese, just as like whether or not they're actually going to make Laurie's cheese or whatever. But I'm not looking forward to seeing a child murdered, a child beheaded, but I'm interested to see what actors and how they portray Blood and Cheese. But that's the big ones. Uh, uh, I'm really looking forward to the dragon trials where everybody's like trying to get on dragons and flying. And um Carmine says, "Hey, big fan, love the content. When are you doing time travel like Sansa?" um Oh, Kit Harrington said absolutely nothing at his panel that just ended 1 hour ago. There were no announcements of any kind out of the Game of Thrones convention. No House of the Dragon casting, nothing. One deleted scene. That's really disappointing. Like, I thought there would be like multiple deleted scenes and at least some casting announcements. Nothing on Snow? That's crazy. That is some really crazy. The huh Man, I mean, the deleted scene was a good deleted scene. I For those that didn't see it, you Carmine actually has it up on his channel, but it's it's uh it's Rhaenys talking to Bela about joining the war, and it's like two characters that needed more screen time, and they cut the scene. Like they cut this poor scene where they actually gave some speaking lines to Bela especially, and it was a good scene, and I can't believe they cut it. Like why? I don't know why they would, but you know. Um, I remember when you Australians interfered in our election in Australia. When are you like 60? When's the last time the United States interfered in an election in Australia? Um, that's probably I don't believe that. I mean, it depends what you mean by like you Americans. The American government. American government hasn't been interfering in too many elections since like the 1950s, but but at least not certainly not in Australia. I mean, maybe there was some stuff going on in Central America that I could see us interfering in the 80s. But um, have you been to Norway? If so, where and what did you think about it? Norway, I've been. Yeah, I've been to Norway. I went from Oslo across to Bergen, and then down the coast to that big cliff that's very difficult to pronounce because everything in Norway is very difficult to pronounce. Norway is hands down the most beautiful country I've ever been to, and I've been to over 100 countries. Like it's stunning. I mean, it's if if anybody ever has a chance to make it to Norway, like just the fjords and the and the waterfalls and just the setting of the cities and villages across along the sea are just insane. It's just that Norway is so prohibitively expensive. It's so prohibitively expensive that it's very difficult for people to go. Um, like everything is quadruple the price of America, like four times. Like you go to a 7-Eleven and you want a Coca Cola, and it's $6, $7 for a Coke at a 7-Eleven at a convenience store, right? Like you're just like, oh my gosh, like to stay at a hostel in like a huge room of bunk beds, like one of those hostels that like if it were in Eastern Europe you'd be spending like $2 a night. It's like $45 to $50 a night for like a bunk bed in this like huge enormous room, and those sell out immediately. Like you have to get on it. Like um I mean, it's utterly beautiful, but like it's crazy. It's crazy. I actually even Scandinavia is hilarious in that sense because Scandinavia is expensive. I mean, keep in mind that like Denmark and Sweden are expensive, but Norway's double Sweden and Denmark. But even in like Sweden and Denmark, if you do something like buy a beer for someone, they're just kind of like shocked. They don't really understand the concept. They're like, "What are you doing? Like this what why are you buying me a beer? Like this is like do you understand how expensive this it's a very very different culture like than like in America where you just at a bar and you're like, "Oh, I got to buy you a beer." because they're like, you're buying me like a $12 beer. Like, what do you? They're just confused, you know. um. What do you think is the significance of the Ravens saying gold for iron to Pate? In the prologue of A Feast for Crows, are the faceless men skin changers? Um, Let me find the exact quote of this because I know that this was like, yeah, Pate's like thing. Um Perhaps it was the fearsome cider. He had not come here to drink, but Alaris had been buying to celebrate, and guilt had made him thirsty. But it almost sounded as if the nightingales were trilling gold for iron, gold for iron, gold for iron. Um, an alchemist, I can change iron into gold. So I don't think it was actually. Um, I don't think it was actually the Ravens screaming gold for iron, unless I'm mistaken. This is what like puzzled me for a second. The gold. I'm just making sure. Yeah. So it's not that there were any Ravens uh going into there wasn't anyone going into Ravens in this, but Pate hears nightingales, which are birds that sing at night. And he thinks he hears among them gold for iron, gold for iron. But it's like so general, like it's not even quoted. It's not like he's hearing gold for iron, you know. Um, he just kind of says it sounded almost as if it almost sounded as if the nightingales were trilling gold for iron, gold for iron, gold for iron. Um, which was passing strange because that's what the stranger had said to him the night. Uh, could they be in the nightingales? Uh, I think it's a bit much. I mean, I guess he does think it's a bit strange. Um, could time traveling Bran be in those nightingales and be doing gold for iron because he wants Pate to do it? Because obviously, gold for iron is him thinking about the deal. Um, because he's trading the iron key for the gold coin. But is there are the nightingales? Could the nightingales literally be saying gold for iron? I mean, if that were the case, it's something like time traveling Bran or something like, um, uh, or Bloodraven or somebody like doing something over um, thousands of miles and getting into those nightingales to try to influence the thought of Pate to actually um, give over the key. What's funny though is it's kind of ridiculous though at like also just it's kind of ridiculous at this point because oh no, this was no, then he flashes back. I'm no thief. I'm a novice of the Citadel. So it's saying, see, the weird thing is like, does Pate even need to be influenced at that point? Because if Pate were to say no to the stranger, Jockin would probably kill him anyway and just take the key. So at this point, he doesn't even need any like influence. So like even if the Nightingales like convinced him like, okay, trade that key for the gold, it wouldn't even matter at that point because he could say like, no, I'm not doing it, and then he would just kill him anyway. Unless Jockin doesn't know he has the key at that point. It's an odd time to influence him. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I would say no. There's no one skin changing those nightingales, and it's just him imagining it because he's guilty. But I was just even trying to think about the logic of what good would it do to skin change them at that point. I mean, I suppose maybe Jockin doesn't know he has the key and therefore wouldn't kill him until he knows that the key is in there. But I don't even know why he's using Pate. It's so easy for a faceless man to just go in there himself, or just kill Pate, look like him, and then go into Walgrave's room. I guess he wouldn't know where it is. Well, Pate does. Maybe. Let's see. What do you think of the idea that burning people was required to birth Targaryens? Egg at Summerhall equals Rhaegar. Duskendale equals Viserys. Rickard equals Dany. I mean, I don't think all of them would require any burnings, right? Like, I'm just like was and the timing isn't necessarily um off. I mean, first of all, like, in order for this theory to work, even on the Rhaegar Viserys Dany, you're conflate one that's conflating conception versus like birthing. So Rhaegar was born at Summerhall. He wasn't conceived at Summerhall. While Dany was conceived after Rickard's burning. She wasn't born after Rickard's burning. So it doesn't really track, just going on those three kids. And so I mean, I understand that, like, thematically people are throwing around fire constantly and how important fire is to the Targaryens, you know? And so because they're throwing shit at a wall constantly with the Targaryens and fire being everywhere, you're gonna hit those notes at different times. But it doesn't really play like in an actual, like, literal magical sense, like the fire being important. It doesn't line up. I don't think there's actually any, like, importance to fire on any sort of birthing or anything like that. Um, but I mean, interesting that someone would, like, make that connection. But I think it's like years and years ago there was a stupid theory that was anytime sapphires is used, it signals that there's lies. And you're like, oh my god. And there's another one that's like, oh, anytime people are drinking Arbor Gold, it's like a signal that people are lying, like lies and Arbor Gold. And you're just like, people are lying like every other line in Ice and Fire. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, you could make anything into lies, because it's honestly every fucking line of Ice and Fire has, like, a moment of deception and a lie. It was one of the dumbest theories, and I'm surprised it got so much traction. Like, some people really still believe the sapphires lies thing. It's so silly. Um, so I mean, with fire, it's just like every other fucking line with Targaryens has to do with fire. So they're kicking around cans of fire. Fire is going to be related to everything they do. I mean, I could pick anything and say, like, well, everything related to Targaryen marriage has to do with fire. Like, oh, okay. I mean, I could go back and try to figure it out, but, like, there's fire related to all of it. Oh, when Danny married his daughter, there was, like, fire, and because the dragon came to the dragon pit, and there was like fire. And when Danny got married to Drogo, she like dreamed of, like, fire. At some point it's just, like, too easy to make the connection. So Do you ever worry about safety when you travel? Yeah, I think about things, but keep in mind that like travel is a lot um to is a lot uh um safer than people think. The world is a lot safer than you think it is. Foreign countries are a lot safer than you think they are. Your home country is a lot more dangerous than you think it is. Um, like getting in a car and driving around in your hometown is a lot more dangerous than putting on a backpack and flying to Nicaragua and like walking around that city. Like the chances of you dying, the chances of you getting maimed are a lot more like just getting in your car at home. Like, so keep in mind the news media and everything has made you think that the whole world is dangerous. It's not that dangerous. Like for the most part, people are really good people, and like they don't, you live in places with laws and police, every country, and like one, like people just don't want to hurt other people. Like that's not the natural state of humanity. Most people are like, oh, they see a foreigner and they're like, oh, this is really interesting. Who are you? Why are you here? That's oh, okay. And they may want some money. They might want to cheat you. Like, that's probably like most of the time that's the worst of it. And it's not that I haven't had like weird run-ins different times in my travels, because I have, but at the same time I've had a lot more in America. Um, Preston, first time watching. Do you ever pick your nose? I think I do. I think I do. Hopefully I don't do it too much on screen on the live chat. Um, do you think they'll change up Rhaenyra's role in dance? She doesn't do much other than hang out in Dragonstone and King's Landing. I think they're gonna do like her making important commands around the painted table and stuff like that. Her mourning her kids dying and stuff like that. I think that's it. The um I'm even trying to think like how much Rhaenyra really did in the final half season of House of the Dragon. I mean, she had her stillbirth, and then oh yeah, she birthed the kid, and then she kind of sat around, and then she went to a dinner. What else did she do? I'm just trying to think like action wise. Like did she actually do anything? I suppose she ordered some dude to be killed and had the she had sex with Daemon. She ordered some dude to be killed and have his body swapped with Laenor. I mean, they'll have like important decisions like this that aren't necessarily important, but that she needs to make. Like you need to go to the Riverlands, and Daemon, you need to do this, and she's certainly gonna, maybe they'll give her more with regards to the dragon riding and things like that, like giving the order. You know how they like switched over whose idea it was. Unfortunately, they took it away from Jace and they gave it to Daemon. They're just gonna switch around some decisions like that. Um, let's see. Speaking of Norway, did you ever watch Vikings? Very good. Carmine was a huge fan of Vikings, but I've watched like 2 episodes of Vikings. It was okay. I just never got into it. But some people were super into it. It was okay. I mean, I only watched 2 episodes on a plane. So, can you go in depth on Sansa's tummy aches, predict bad issues, and your theories on how if Sandor and her will reunite? And it's okay. Wall, South Dakota is a huge disappointment. So yeah, I mean, if you're driving across South Dakota super bored, because I mean it's a huge disappointment because for those who have never been to South Dakota, if you're in a car and you're driving from say Wisconsin and you're heading to say Montana, Okay, you're driving west or driving east in the United States. Crossing country in the United States is interesting because you start seeing all of these tourist trap signs. The middle of America is filled with farms and nothing, and so they try to convince you that there's a reason to stop your car and bring money into their local economy. There's none. There's no reasons to do this. There's a few jokes about this in National Lampoon's Vacation about how I think the wife says you're going to drive us 500 miles out of the way in order to see the world's largest ball of mud. There's a lot of these kind of things. Like all of a sudden it's like crocodile paradise. You know, like some dude like has a pond with 2 crocodiles in it and he wants you to stop. But you've got 8 hours more of driving to get across the state. And so middle America tourist traps are kind of this thing. There's not much in the middle of America. It's flat. It's farmland. There's not much to see. And so you're just, you know, they're trying to get you to do anything. And you see these signs. And sometimes they look interesting. You're like, oh my gosh, really? Like there's an African safari here in the middle of Oklahoma. If you've seen Tiger King, which is one of these middle America like tourist traps. So Wall, South Dakota became we're going to go further than everybody else in the whole goddamn country trying to get you to stop your car. And so starting in like western Wisconsin, hundreds of miles away, you start seeing these signs like only 576 miles to Wall, only 575 miles to Wall, only 574. And seriously, the whole route, it's just like every mile, 5-cent coffee, free water. Like, what's this? Okay. Sorry. Free water, like, you know, cowboy rides, horse rides, like, it's like, might as well stop at Wall, like ice cream, like every mile. And then when you get within like the nearest 100 miles, it's like every quarter mile, like you're like, oh my gosh. And it's just like hitting you like stop at Wall, South Dakota. And so everybody, you know, not everybody, but a lot of people do stop at Wall because you're like, might as well stop. And it's this large department store that's in an Old West theme, and that's kind of it, you know. And yeah, there's free water and 5-cent coffee, but like it's just kind of weird because it's just like this, they advertise it for so long and then you get there and it's just this very large general store. It's but I guess there's not much else in the area, so people go. Anyway, the actual question, which was Sansa's tummy aches predict how bad an issue. I don't know if there's like too much to like how much Sansa's tummy aches predict things. Just, you know, when Sansa's nervous, she gets a tummy ache, and then there's theories about that I subscribe to about you know, Sansa's background being both like going back to her roots, where on her mother's side, and it relating to her father's side. Like her father's side is obviously Stark, so you've got this wolf. So you've got, and then on the mother's side, the idea is that her background goes to bats, because Catelyn's mother was a Went, and then before the Wents, you know, the people that ran Harrenhal were Lawston, and even though we don't have any proof that the Lawstons passed on to the Wents, they both had bat sigils, and like we have this story of Mad Danelle Lawston, which looks like Sansa. She has red hair and everything. So this idea that there's bats and wolves in Sansa's background, and these are the two sigils, kind of makes sense. Like Brienne is going forth with ice hidden, you know, because it got remelted, and then her Lawston's shield hidden, searching for Santa. And plus there's stuff with like werewolf and vampire duality as well with George and stuff like this. Um, so this is why like you get these like stories about her having butterflies or bats in her tummy, but I don't necessarily think there's any like big correlation. It's just that she when she feels nervous, she thinks about stuff going on in her tummy. Um, Oh, what does Martin have to say about artificial life, clones, sophisticated AI, genetic engineering? How does he portray sentience outside of humanity? Um, so let's see. George is a um I'm trying to think of situations where in his stories where they created sentientness from scratch, and I cannot think of any. He has many, many stories where people's consciousness are downloaded into computers. Um, and there's a really beautiful story called The Glass Flower, that is kind of the story if you really want to know about George R. R. Martin and what he thinks about consciousness. But he understands that like George clearly kind of believes that the consciousness in our mind is related to memory. But if we make effects on the world, what we do in the world externally is in a sense memory, because like that's also proof that we existed. And so in that sense, metaphorically, our consciousness continues to exist through the works that we do. And this is kind of in the talking about old Nan, like as long as you remember old Nan, she'll never stop being around and stuff like that. But I'm trying to think if he ever he does have one story where there's a sophisticated AI warship, where there's a sophisticated AI that thinks of its own ship as a body and then needs to like cleanse the human beings, the viruses within. And then after that, AI was kind of made illegal in the Thousand Worlds universe. And so you don't see many advanced AIs in most of his sci-fi stories. I mean, not that all of his sci-fi stories were Thousand Worlds, but it was just not in his wheelhouse. Genetic engineering was more like what he focused on than like AI or clones or things like that. But he definitely thinks about sentientness and like memory and consciousness and the idea of being a ghost. Like that's kind of the primary thing he writes about in his science fiction writing. Like he really thinks about what human consciousness is, and so each story has a little twist on it. He thinks about blended consciousness as well. Like what happens if you took two brains and put them together? Like how do you separate then again? Like if you take two glasses of water and put them together, like how do we separate out that water again? Which is why The Glass Flower is like a really beautiful story, because this is honestly a story in which a robot or a cyborg with a consciousness of another human being uploaded into him swaps brains with another human being, and well, maybe not human, but another being, and how those consciousnesses like change. Like one person can forget and one person can't. And what happens to consciousness when you can't forget? Like forgetting is a big part of our lives. And what does consciousness do when it fears death versus when it doesn't fear death? Those are very different ideas. Anyway, you really need to read The Glass Flower. It's a crazy story. It's a beautiful, beautiful, crazy story. In Mel's point of view, she lists Bag of Finger Bones as a powerful source of glamour. Is it possible that she has Davos's and that he lost at the Battle of Blackwater? Could she glamour him and burn Shireen? Um, it's definitely super suspicious that Mel says um that Mel says that she has that a bag of finger bones can be used to glamour. It is super super suspicious, um, and so we do kind of think about that kind of stuff. But was it just thrown in there to as a red herring so that we go nuts, and like and but I'm trying to think of an opportunity for Mel to do this. Like, what would she do uh, to pretend to be Davos? Like, I mean, you bring up could she glamour him to burn Shireen? I don't necessarily know what advantage it would be versus just grabbing her and putting her on a post. Like, does she need to lure her out? She's got these army of people that can just like bring her by force. I mean, and I've thought about this one before. Like, I'm just riddling like what use would Mel have for trying to make her or someone else look like Davos? um, there was a theory that went around that Davos in the Davos chapters is not actually Davos, but and that it's a glamored Mel. That Davos actually like, but I don't know. You're in his head, so that's got to be like the real Davos. But I suppose when Davos shows up at some point, um, uh, that maybe we have to question if it's really him. But it was just an odd. It's so suspicious when she says it, right? Like, let me bring up the doop doo. Hello, hello. How goes it?
Oh, I was just. I'm sorry. Finish your thought. I was waiting for you to get to Mr. Plum's uh, thing,
Oh,
and I'm
okay,
trying to get
okay.
Trey.
All right, all right. Um, yeah, that's the thing is Melisandre brings up the finger bones even after all of the Davos chapters are done. So it's not even we can't even we it can't even be used as a surprise thing to wonder about whether Davos was actually killed or not. Because at least if it happened before Davos won, you could be like, oh, maybe those hands that were above that were put on the walls of White Harbor were not Davos's um, because he was swapped out. But it's not even used for that. It's just super suspicious. But I can't actually think of like many reasons why Mel would need to impersonate Davos. I don't know. You ever thought of you know about this one, Carmine?
What I wasn't paying attention. I was talking to Trey. What's up? What's happening?
So Davos at the beginning of our of um all through a Clash of Kings, he carries around his neck his bag of finger bones that Stannis cut off, and then he loses them at the Blackwater. Um, and we can talk about there's metaphorical reasons for him needing to lose them and things like this, but then in A Dance with Dragons, like Melisandre is just randomly talking about how if you have an item of somebody, it really helps you glamour um, in order to make the illusion seem more real. And she mentions a bag of finger bones, and you're like, what? Like, oh, hmm. I mean, I'm trying to just think of like chapters where Davos is not there. I wonder, I need to reread the prologue because it be that like Crescent when he's talking to Davos in the prologue of a Clash of Kings, he's actually talking to Melisandre, and that it was Melisandre. But then she would have had to steal the bones and give them back to him. She would have had to like slip the bones off of Davos and then put them back on Davos at some point. I mean, it'd be interesting to think about if there's any stuff that's revealed in there that as glamored Davos Melisandre like figures out, but she would have to get the bones off him and put them back on, which is a little difficult. Davos, would Davos be asleep? Stuff like that. Um, hmm. It's worth. I'm just thinking of other chapters where Davos even is in, not in perspective. There's not many. Uh, Maybe a Catalan, but Davos is next to Melisandre. Then, hmm, I don't know. Maybe I'll reread the prologue and imagine that it's Melisandre the whole time. Anyway, so this is what you were waiting for, Carmine. Um, would you ever go on a podcast and just talk about your life, your travels and insights on obscure topics and places? Never ceases to amaze me. This one you wanted to be on for, Carmine?
Oh no, it's just I explained it to him in the comments, and I'll say it here to anybody who cares. When you and I first started, I told like, by the way, you and I started this 5 fucking years ago.
Yeah,
You realize that, right?
yeah,
The time has flown by.
yeah,
Funny enough, I was actually discussing this with someone else. We've actually been doing the podcast together longer than we actually did our own channels separately.
yeah. It's pretty crazy. But I want to say that
Hmm.
like, I mean, we met each other fairly early, right? I mean, or started talking to
It,
each other
it
fairly early.
it wasn't until like the incident
Yeah, it
happened,
was the
and then like
incident.
I reached out. Right.
It
By
was
the way,
yeah.
I have to talk to you about that privately later because I found something like really dumb of me from like way back when. But anyways, no. So basically, I was just trying to explain to this person is that whenever you do a podcast with anybody, a collab with anybody, never bring up like their personal life unless they do it first. That's like an unspoken rule. You don't do
Yeah.
that because you can really blindside the person. You and I talk like privately all the time, and I would never bring up like private stuff with like your marriage or your kids, God forbid.
Mm.
Like I don't want to do that. It's not the topic unless you bring it up first.
Yeah.
That's for you to bring up. But I have hounded you though about like starting an Insta where you upload like pictures of your travels and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to. I'd like to sometime. It's funny because it's like when talking about one's life, like one like there's certain things you don't want to reveal about yourself, but then there's lots of things you do and feel like you do want to reveal about yourself. But a lot of life is very random and it's not very structured. So it's like, where do I start? Like where do I bring it? Like, how do I talk about my backpacking trip across Europe when I was 19, or my study abroad when I was 20, like or living in China. And each of those topics I can go on and on about forever. Um, and I don't know like how many people are interested in that and if they're here for ice and fire or whatever. I know some people are and then some people aren't. Um, so and it's odd. Um, but yeah, I mean, most people are more interesting than you think they are once you actually get into their life and start talking about like what they've done. Um, like Carmine doesn't talk about it like about his personal life very much because when he first started his channel, it was going for a while, and then he had somebody try to blackmail him. Um,
Yeah, this woman that I used to know from like high school, she disappeared for a while and then came back and she was like fucked up on like, hard drugs and stuff. And she was just looking, I didn't realize this because at the time, I never met anyone who's like really messed up, which is funny because I love the Stern Show back
yeah,
like the golden ears of the Stern Show. And Artie Lang was really messed up on it and like just never saw it. But like when you meet someone like that who's like hopped up on that stuff, they will go through any extremes and lengths to get money to get more on that stuff. That was also, I'm glad you mentioned that. That was a rookie mistake on my part for even being that personal and opening up like that on my channel. Don't ever
yeah.
do that because
Well,
people will use it
but
against you.
I've seen other people do it. Like, I think wasn't there a big video that like what's his name, Boogie, the big fat guy?
Mm.
Didn't he like
Uh,
he went through his like life and like how he ended up where he was. Um, it's interesting to actually like explain your life like in total to someone. I mean, granted, you do it on resumes quite a bit, but you don't in resumes you don't actually like talk about the emotional turns that actually caused you to do something. You know, you tend not to be like, well, I went through a bad breakup, so I decided to do this. Like, that's never part of it. Or like, oh, I needed to take some time off because this person died. Or I got really soured by this horrible person at work, so I just wanted to leave this job. It's always something different. It's a different narrative.
Well, the only reason I even did that is because I took a really long hiatus, and people were wondering like, where'd you go, and like that. It was a rookie mistake on my end, because the difference between me and Boogie is that I do Game of Thrones content. Boogie's content is basically centered on him being like this big goofball. It's a difference. People don't really come to like listen to your problems. They don't. They're here for like one thing, which is to hear us rant about Ice and Fire and all that stuff, and that's fair. Like that's fair, but it was a rookie mistake on my part, and like people will bring it up every now and then to try to like fuck with me, and I'm like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, try. You should make a blog channel where you like you talk about your travels and stuff. Your CIA dealings, your
Yeah, I
FBI
mean,
stuff.
a lot of it is also like, you know, um, because there's so little time. Like even if I took a live stream and I only talk about travels, which might be a good live stream. Like somebody's going to be disappointed that I'm not talking about Ice and Fire. It's like every time I put out a
Oh,
video, somebody's always disappointed that I didn't put out a different video. You know.
fuck
Um,
them. Hey, look, fuck them. Everything you like, literally 99% of everything we ever do is fucking free, with the occasional stuff on like Patreon. Like,
mm.
suck a dick. They should be happy and lucky they get anything from you, because you put out some good quality. You, Trey, Glidus, you guys put out some good quality stuff. Suck a dick. Be happy with what you get. I
I
know.
do.
Hey, look, when it comes to that stuff, like I'm such an asshole about it, but it's the truth, though. It's the truth.
I mean, maybe I'll do. I don't know. Maybe I'll do a travel stream or something. It's difficult to go through like the entire life, and like because I do have some big stories that I can tell, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
Before we
Um,
get off this topic, if it's okay, hold on. I don't want to mention this out loud, but you posted this picture once, I think, in my Discord server, and I thought it was really cool. I'll
hmm.
message you on Facebook the one I'm talking about. It's the picture where you and hold on. I think it's really I think it's a really fun
Oh,
picture. It's a really nice like throwback. Are you cool with showing everybody that one?
sure. Let me pull. Yeah. Do you have it? Are you sending it to me, or do you have it, or do you want me to find it?
Why would I have it? No, you have it.
I
It's your
thought.
stuff.
Jesus. All right. I've gotta like go through these and let me see here. Jeez. I've got to
Even
find my
Glidus
Ethiopia
and like
album.
Trey. Glidus and Trey, like Glidus goes, nobody ever asked me to make the best stuff I've made. Following what the audience says they want is just a bad idea. True. And Trey
True.
was like, the life of a YouTuber is constantly hearing fans being upset about you not posting. Well, Trey, come on, man, you're going crazy on Twitter. Not that I'm complaining. I love seeing you dress up in medieval armor, but I'm just saying.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
there's actually a comment here that's like, if you could tell Trey to stop posting thirsty pics, I'm trying to be heterosexual, but he's making it difficult. Um, yeah, this is you're gonna enjoy some Trey photos. Is That's it. You're not gonna stop. Like you could say like you're not. What are you gonna do? Like stop following Trey? Not gonna happen. Trey's gonna be the
It's not gonna
top of your
happen.
feed. That's just what's gonna happen, man. I'm not stop following Trey. Like I'm gonna see Trey stuff every day. What
It's true.
what are my options? Stop following Trey? Nope. I'm just gonna. I do wonder like where's Trey's buying all of these like armor stuff, where he's getting it. Um,
Honestly,
I,
that'd be great if like his fans are just like donating it just so he can put them on. Just fuck it, why not?
that's probably good. I mean, he needs a PO box of like interesting. Okay, let's see. Into Ethiopia here. Let me see here. You wanted oh, this photo. Here we go. So Carmine was like, "Oh, post this photo." I was like, "Okay, this is me. This is me in Ethiopia." And there's a city in the east in Ethiopia called Harar, and he there's this one dude who just like sits outside of the city every night with like a basket of meat, and he feeds the hyenas, and it is one of the craziest freaking experiences because you like go outside of the city walls and you just hear this like growls going on, like, and you see these like twinkling eyes everywhere, and you're like, oh my god, like what the hell is out there, because it's pitch black, and you like take a picture and the flash on your phone or your camera will go off, and you'll just see like hundreds of hyenas, and you're like, oh my god, like, and you sit down and he's got this basket of meat, and you like you feed the hyenas with these meat. In fact, like I think there's one, I don't have the photo handy, but you actually like put the meat on a stick in your mouth and a hyena comes over and like bites it off. So I do have a picture of like me holding the stick in my mouth with a hyena like biting off this meat. But it's yeah, they that's that crazy story. But Ethiopia was a fun interesting time. But yeah.
Yeah, so this is what I was talking about to like everyone who was like, from like the question from Mr. Plum there is like you have some really interesting stories. You would never see me anywhere with those fucking crazy things because I think they like have one of the strongest bite of like any land
They
animal
do, they
on Earth,
do. But it's
and they're so creepy. Nyeh.
they oh much more sinister and creepy in person. Like to just be outside of yeah, this
Okay.
is the dude. You go out there and there's just like hundreds of hyenas just like waiting for him to like feed them. And it's pretty freaking crazy. Um that's the dude.
Yeah, fuck that. That guy is braver than me. Fuck that. Those things look like they're ready to like to jump on him if he doesn't have their food. Ugh, no, I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm
I
good. I've seen
mean
The Lion King. You're right.
they yeah. Yeah, it's a fun time. Like especially in the east there, cuz like Ethiopia, what's great is that like the people wear such colorful outfits. I like this picture I took. Now that I have my Ethiopia album up, I've got these like, but this picture I took of like I passed by a butcher shop, and it's like all the women are like crowding in to try to get best cut of meat, and they all have these colorful you know abayas on, and I just when I took the picture, this one woman looks back at me like at this one moment, like and just like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, click." Like, um, but there's some fun stuff. Oh, this is some other interesting things about Ethiopia. Now that we're on the topic, people are like, "Why are we talking ice and fire?"
See, this is what I'm talking about. Like,
I
fuck those
know.
guys. No offense to meat.
So what's crazy about Ethiopia is like you see all these people like prostrating and like bowing down and touching their head to the ground. This is a church. And there's call to prayers. Like this is a church. Like these are all Christians. And like they're all dressed like Muslims, like covering their heads, like in hijab and abaya, praying while touching their heads to the ground, like going like doing it a call to prayer time. But these are actually Christians. So it's kind of interesting. Um, what are some other cool ones? Okay, a couple more photos from Ethiopia. This is close to I went to Ethiopia in like 2010. This is a long time ago. This is a dude in his camel truck. He's very proud of his camels. He's like, "Yup, I got these camels." He's so proud, so proud. He's pretty happy. um, you know, but it was a pretty cool Pretty cool experience there. There we go. Little kids. Oh shit! Did I ever show you the whip fights? Oh
Pardon me?
man, I totally forgot. Whip fights.
The whip fights? What? Like actual, like a whip, like whoosh, like that?
Oh man, I guess sometime I need to upload the whip fights. So during this one festival, they have these whip fights where these two people like. So the guy on the so that you use one stick to block, and then the other people have whips, and they just kind of like fight with these whips for a while, right? And shit, can I show the? I'm trying to see if let's see what I have here. Oh yeah, this is it. Let me see if I can well, let me see if I can download this. And then get it up here because let's see here. Yeah, here we go. Let me move it off screen here. Okay. Okay. Oh, fuck. So these are these whip fights. Yeah. There's the big dumbass. There I am. It's like, so embarrassing.
You really got a good on our leg. Hey, thanks a lot.
Where are you from?
America.
Oh, from Obama.
Yeah. Yep.
Wait, I didn't realize that was you. That was like in the fight. Oh, you
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
challenged him to a whip.
You're
fight?
from Obama. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Just randomly throw down with this dude.
Well, you know, there's just like whether it was going to be in a whip fight or not. Look, dude, like, when am I going to have the chance to like be in Ethiopia and be in a whip fight? So I
When are you gonna have a chance to be a white guy and be in Ethiopia and whip a black guy? I don't know. Like when does that normally happen? Hasn't
All I
happened
know
for
is
hundreds
I'm
of
really
years.
bad. I'm really bad at whipping. Like it's like the fact that he's like and then I'm like flop plop flop. It's just oh man. So I can't believe like the entire gang is here today, going through the comments. Um, oh Jesus. Well, let's see here.
You're gonna answer this guy's question first, though, before
Which?
you click on
Oh
someone
yeah,
else's.
yeah. Could future Bran be living deep inside Hodor? You know, I definitely thought about that kind of situation. Like, is time traveling? Like, where is time traveling Bran? Um, and does he exist in the like? Uh, should if the three eyed crow is time traveling Bran and he's talking to Bran, you'd think that there would be contemporary in the story. Like he's not sending visions from the future back. He's gone back in time and he's now sending visions like in a contemporary situation to Bran. um, and so you know, could he be in like where is he located? Is he inside the werewood trees right now? Is he in the air? Where exactly is time traveling Bran located? And if he is inside the trees, that means like when Bran went into the tree, they were kind of both in the same place. But could he actually be in Hodor? Um, I suppose it's possible, and I also wonder like could there be many time traveling Brans at once in the same location? Like, are there 1,000 time traveling Brans all floating around, or is it the same time traveling Bran each time? Um, if it is Groundhog's Day and there's just one timeline, but they're just redoing it, when time traveling Bran goes back, are all the previous incarnations of time traveling Bran still kind of lurking around? And the answer is I don't know. Like, could they all be time traveling Bran? Is there one time traveling Bran stuck inside Hodor? Is there a thousand of them in the werewood tree? Are they all kind of floating around? Thinking about the present, like where time traveling Bran is, it's a dizzying idea. It just makes my brain want to break when I think about time traveling Bran going back in time 1,000 times and redoing the timeline. And it being the same timeline, not creating parallel worlds. Like you're overwriting itself, which means like would the previous iterations of Bran be there? I guess it's very brain breaking. So if there's one there, maybe there's a one of many. If there's only one time traveling Bran, I tend to think that he's inside the tree. But if there's many time traveling Brans floating around, working in concert, then maybe one is deep inside Hodor. I don't know. Um,
There was a
let's see.
comment this guy made. They those guy those Ethiopian dudes made that game up just to whip you. Oh, by the way, there's I've this one kid will not shut up about it. This one guy who supposedly represents the writers has been trying to ask you a question for the longest time. You want me to just tell you what it is?
Sure.
He was trying to ask you, and I'm reading it off here from the comments. Question from the writers: who's your favorite Star Wars character? I don't know why that's important, but it's very urgent.
Oh, who's my favorite Star Wars character? Um,
These are the writers for your fanfic, by the
I
way. I don't know
know, I
why they
know.
need
I'm
to know
just
your favorite Star Wars character.
maybe they're thinking about a cameo or an homage kind of situation. Um, I always liked Grand Moff Tarkin. Like I always thought like he was just this kind of sinister, cool guy that anybody that can tell Darth Vader and command him around and like without any sort of fear is kind of a it was always a cool guy in my mind. Like I understand that like he killed billions and things like this, but like um there was just always something about Grand Moff Tarkin. I also liked Wedge Antilles just because he was like the bit role in that movie. Um, I don't know. Carmine, do you have a favorite?
I like Obi-Wan. That's my favorite.
That's, Obi-Wan's a good one. You know, I guess in my old age now, I'm like, I really like Aunt Beru. I'm like, why isn't she getting
What?
enough time? Are they really doing an Aunt Beru series? Is that really happening?
No, where'd you get that? There's no way that's happening. There's no way. By the way, real quick, this is completely random. Dragon Demands brought it up like 1,000 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was so recently, for like the past weekend, there's been like a con of Game of Thrones. I'm sorry, not a con of Game, a Game of Thrones con. It's like the same thing as Con of Thrones, but different location, whatever. It's the same crap. Nothing happened there. Like Kit Harington came and he has this like weird mustache going on, like this Fu Manchu mustache. It's weird. Nothing happened. There was no mention of snow. I think you already discussed the video I uploaded, the deleted scene with Bela and Rhaenys. Nothing happened. It was a complete waste of time for everybody involved. We got to see Jack Gleason and his mustache. He's the guy who played Joffrey. He has a mustache.
He showed up with
a
mustache?
Everyone has a fucking mustache, Preston. Let me show you this shit. Hold on. Let me show you.
I know.
Oh, by the way, read the thing. I'll send you on Facebook, but read the thing I sent you on Facebook real quick. You may want to take care of that later.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm just trying to look out for you, buddy. But
I know what you're
that's
saying.
Joffrey and that's Joffrey
I know what you're saying. Well, yeah. I mean,
that's Joffrey and Aegon 2. And here is Kit Harington and Paddy Considine. If you want to put that up.
Let's see here.
Somehow he looks older with the mustache. It's weird. He's like me in a sense, Joffrey. Like if I don't have a mustache or a beard, I look very young.
Yeah. This is like the idea of like villain and villain like hanging out, like similar guys. So there's always this this order of stuff where a certain fashion thing is considered kind of like provocative, and then it's done by people for a long time, and then it just kind of becomes normal. So there's some extreme like fashion thing. So like the hipster mustache has been going around for man, it's been like a decade that the hipster mustache has been happening. But now it's like not even hipster anymore to have a mustache. It's just you can just have it. And it's just you're not making any sort of hipster statement. You're not trying to be funny. You just have a mustache, and that's it. Like it's not even a thing anymore. All of that like
I would watch this shit. I would listen to the shit out of that podcast with the Joffrey actor and the Aegon 2 actor. Villain to villain, call it that.
Ether asks if Dorne is polyamorous, then Elia might have been okay with Lyanna. If so, Rhaegar was just a harem anime protagonist who failed his chosen one story arc. It's difficult to say how okay people are with affairs and being polyamorous in Dorne. Like yes, like Lady Nym has sex with both Fowler twins at once, and Garrus Drinkwater tells Quentin that he thinks it's completely okay for him to sleep with the Drinkwater twins or like have paramours and things like this and stuff like that. But at the same time, when Arianne like does various activities, her father does become kind of nervous and or at least she perceives him being that way. So like and Quentin Martell being raised by Ironwood also tends to be a fairly nervous conservative character. So whether things are blanket one way or not in Dorne is difficult to say. It's difficult to say when the first major Dornish character that we really know is Oberyn, you know? And you kind of say, well, that's not really a good representation of how an entire culture is, right? I always had this problem with Star Trek. So Spock is the first Vulcan that we meet, and all other Vulcans are kind of based on Spock, and oh, they should all act like Spock. And you're like, dude, Spock was raised on like with a half human, half Vulcan like life, and like went to Starfleet Academy and has been hanging out with human beings his entire life. How representative is he really of Vulcan society? And was it a real mistake to like base other Vulcans off him when he had such a unique background? And so I think it's a bit like that. Like I would never be like, oh, what's the typical French person like? Oh, well, the typical French person is like a half French, half American person that went to American school who spent like every summer in America. I'd be like, no, that's not the typical French person. like why on earth would I think that's the typical French person? And that's the typical Vulcan. And so it's like Oberyn, is he the typical Dornishman? Well, okay, we're talking about like some dude who is like banging somebody else's wife or his paramour and had a duel when he was like, you know, who was going to prostitutes when he was 12, like had a duel because he banged somebody's wife at like 15, was exiled, went to the Citadel, studied poisons, traveled the world. Is he really a typical Dornishman? So, you know, so I don't know. Like this idea that Elia might have been okay with Lyanna, we know nothing about Elia. We know nothing. We know that Doran is not like Oberyn, and Oberyn is like Oberyn. And so what's Elia like? We have no clue. So she might have been okay with like him having Lyanna in the picture. You know, who knows? You know, you could write it that way, but I would say it's a bit far to say that's the default position. Like, I'm not saying it like you know, it might not be. Anything's possible, but it would seem a little weird. It would seem a little weird from the default position that someone would just be like, oh yeah, cool, yeah, totally. You know, oh you want to bring a 14, 15-year-old girl into our into our romance? Yeah, that sounds great. You know, George is weird. Who knows? But it's not the first thing I would think of. You know. Do you watch plane-related channels like Itri Report? Do you know about this, Carmine? What
does he mean?
I trip report.
I don't know. What does he mean? Like an actual plane that goes
It
whoosh in the air?
It seems to be a channel on on airlines and stuff. No, I've never check the kind of stuff out.
There's a channel for everything. Holy shit.
I know, right?
Channel on planes? Jesus Christ. Hey, by the way, real quick, I wanna, have you seen these new genres on YouTube where it's a guy working at McDonald's making food and he doesn't say anything? Sometimes they don't say stories. It's just them making food at McDonald's. You ever see those?
No.
Oh, It's a new genre. It's a like point of view type of situation. They put like a GoPro on their head and they'll make people's food. And this fucking guy, his name is Steven Patula.
Yeah.
Spatula without the S. He has like millions of views of him just making a fucking Big Mac or whatever. And I was talking about this with someone else, and it's so funny that like the dream of every content creator is to become big enough on YouTube that you can quit your job. This guy will never be able to do that because the moment he quits his job, like where's the content coming from? You can't make Big Macs at your fucking house. Like, who the fuck wants to see that? No, we want to see the inner workings of McDonald's. So it's the new genre.
There's a lot of weird YouTube like phenomena out there, like boxing videos. Like, well, first of all, children playing with toys is an enormous industry. Like, just a kid playing with a toy, because like when people want to like use YouTube as a babysitter, which you know, and any parent does, like, you know, it's just like, what fascinates a kid? It's like, well, I want to know about how my toys work. How can I learn how my toys work? Oh, by watching another kid play with toys. And you're like, well, I have that truck. What is that kid going to do with that truck that I don't know about? And for the most part, it's not necessarily too different from like Let's Play video games, where you watch somebody else play a video game, because you're like, well, what secret or what technique did somebody use that I didn't know, you know, and you kind of like just watch it. So I imagine something like him making food at McDonald's. It's a pretty fascinating thing, because like, how many times, like, we've all been to McDonald's a million times. How exactly everything is put together, we kind of see it off and afar, but to like be right there and see all the equipment and what goes into the process of actually making it, I could imagine that being very lucrative. Like, it's just being informational stuff. It's pure information. It's just pure experience where you're like, wow, now I know exactly how that's done. That's a good idea. I'm surprised his McDonald's would allow it, though.
That's what people were saying in the comments. I think he owns that like franchisee, like, in his little area. But
still, there's got to be
proprietary
information on like how McDonald's like runs things.
No clue. He's doing it. There's this other kid who works at a Jersey Mike's. For those of you who don't know, Jersey Mike's is like a sandwich place, and the kid will just, you know, make food, and he'll tell a story about something that happened at his store. So these are becoming very, very lucrative.
Thoughts on the theory that Jaime and Cersei are the Mad King's children? It explains Jaime's dream of his mother and adds some dark irony to Tywin. So, specific to this theory, when The World of Ice and Fire came out, Elio and Linda once advertised like, well, there is actually one big theory that our book like disproves, and that is like Jaime and Cersei being like the Mad King's children. And the first reaction from people was like, that was a big theory, really? Like, we've all heard about the Tyrion one, but Jaime and Cersei, really? And I think it's because there's some information about when Joanna Lannister is in King's Landing and when she's back at Casterly Rock, and I think she's not at court around the time of their conception, making it impossible for Aerys to be their parent, and that, you know, or like Tywin and Joanna were sent home, you know, well before the kind of conception date or something, and so it couldn't have happened. So that's the idea with that. But yeah, I just remember them being like, "Oh yeah, no, there's this big theory that we disprove," and it's like, well, it wasn't really that big of a theory. Preston just got disinvited from Red Letter Media for bashing Trek. No, I just think it's very funny that we get our perceptions of alien races from anecdotes. You know, like the big political thing. Like when you're in these conversations about politics, and like you're talking to an idiot when they put forward anecdote as proof of trend. Like, this is the big thing. Like knowing the difference between an anecdote and a trend is like those that do not realize the difference are really stupid. And the minute you're in you're in an argument with somebody where they're bringing anecdotes, you're like, oh fuck, like this guy, there's no reaching him because they're a fucking idiot. But the thing is, we do this in entertainment all the time. Like we take like one anecdote, like what Klingon do we know? Well, we know Worf. You're like, oh really? A Klingon who was raised on Earth by a human parents is now like the typical fucking Klingon. Which I always thought the Worf character was stupid because he acts way too Klingon, considering he was raised on Earth by human parents. like yet he's always talking about Klingon honor, and it's like, what the fuck do you know about Klingon honor? This is like. I mean, it's like Carmine talking about Brazil. What does he fucking know about Brazil?
Nothing. You're right. Hey, now that you bring that up, someone was asking me about this earlier. Remember, you went on this whole. By the way, I don't take this as an insult at all. This was a couple weeks ago. Remember that I got into a fight with that one person on Twitter, and they called me a gringo. And you saw that, and you were like explaining to me how ridiculous that was. I don't take that as an insult at all. If you want to go into that briefly, go for it. But like, you're not wrong. You were so not wrong.
I forgot. Oh, so Carmine was Carmine.
Don't even go into
he started sending me like the Twitter threads, but like Carmine got in an argument with someone because he Carmine accidentally missed.
Don't go into that detail.
It's minor though. So Carmine accidentally used the wrong pronoun on somebody, and just for a second, it was actually, I think he was you were talking about Darcy, right? Emma Darcy.
Yeah, Emma Darcy. Emma Darcy.
You were saying like you said like Emma Darcy. She's like the greatest actress ever. Like that was like your statement. And somebody got on you for using the wrong pronoun for her because she's non-binary. She uses their. And you were like, oh, come on, give me a fucking break, you know? And then this person like starts like going like really hard on Carmine for using the wrong pronoun. And at some point they called him a fucking gringo. And I was like, that's pretty offensive. And even like,
I don't think it is, but whatever.
Well, this is the funny thing is that like the dude saying it didn't think it was offensive, and you didn't really think it was offensive, but everybody else thought it was really, really offensive. And I think it's definitely an offensive term. And so Carmine's like, I don't understand. Why should I find this offensive? And I was like, oh my God, Carmine, dude, like. I'm like psychologically like telling him like, dude, your entire life you've been raised in America, like feeling you're not quite fully American, but at the same time you're not quite Brazilian. You're like caught in between worlds, and this person is like straight up telling you you're not fucking Brazilian enough. In my mind, to be considered Brazilian. Meanwhile, in America, people are telling you all the time you're not American enough. Okay, and so you have these you have these two like very hateful ideas. You're not one of us. You're an other to me. And then over here, they're like you're an other to us. And so like Carmine has no place. Like that's very exclusionary and fucking just a fucking dickhead statement to say to somebody. Like you belong nowhere. Like you suck. Like, and like I explained this to Carmine, and Carmine's like, yeah, whatever. I don't think about that.
I don't care. Who fucking cares?
But I was like, how is it offensive? I was like, it's pretty offensive because like you're telling somebody you're a fucking other. Is what it is. You know, you're not one of us. You're a fucking other. And so you know, but. You know, there's a lot of stress and hardship that you've had as an immigrant to America. Some of it that's probably on a very like subconscious level. Like, did I tell you about like John Oliver once talked about how John Oliver got his citizenship like 5 years ago or so. Like it was just he was finishing up on the Daily Show. It was like his last year on the Daily Show, and he got his citizenship. And keep in mind, John Oliver is married to an American woman, has been living in America for for a long time, is super wealthy and privileged and successful. And he gets his American citizenship, and the people of the Daily Show were like, they gave him like a card and like a Budweiser, and they were like, congratulations on like becoming a US citizen. And he said that he didn't even think about it, but he just started crying. Like he just started crying, like, and he couldn't control himself. And he didn't understand where it was coming from. And he just started like weeping uncontrollably. And he went home later and he was thinking about it. And he's like, he didn't realize how much stress in the back of his head he had dedicated to the fact that he wasn't a US citizen and all of like the bureaucratic hurdles and things like that he dealt with. And he put it out of his mind. But then at that moment, the release of realizing he was now an American and he didn't have to like worry about that was so overwhelming for him that he just started crying. So I don't, there's probably psychological shit like that going on deep inside you, Carmine.
Really, I don't feel it, but I guess I just don't take offense to that shit. What offended me the most is the fact that this person thought I was like a Matt Walsh type of asshole or a Ben Shapiro trying to misgender someone on purpose. Like, look, I'm not that much of an asshole. I was just trying, context and intent matters. I was just trying to show support for Emma Darcy, and that's it. And yeah, that was basically it. So they were trying to do everything they could to yeah. It was a shit show. Funny shit show though.
Hurry up and read Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. You will see so many parallels that George is clearly influenced by, with all your free time. Okay. I shall. Let me see how long these are. This is Tad Williams with the Dragon Bone chair. Yeah, I've heard people have brought this up a few times with me. Okay, so each book is they're pretty long, but maybe I can find the audiobooks. On average, they're like Ice and Fire size. The first two shorter, the last one longer. Well, that's interesting. Some people have done some videos on it relating to Ice and Fire.
Preston, is that your stomach?
That is. Are
you hungry? Just go grab something.
I should. I didn't eat breakfast. But I should eat something. I'll be like Hassan, who's just constantly like eating on his streams.
Fucker.
That was my stomach, though. Question from the writers. We calculated the nighttime high tide for Arion 3. Should be 8 p.m. Have you considered this? So here's the weird thing about, and I don't know how that's calculated because, so high tide happens twice a day, and once when the moon is directly overhead and once when it's on the backside of the Earth. And so for our Earth, the moon rises and sets at different times every day. It's not consistent. And so, but in Ice and Fire, generally speaking, he talks about like it becoming nighttime and the moon rising. And so like the moon being always coming at night. Now, I don't know like when moonrise is and like when it's directly overhead. So I just kind of thought at like midnight would be when like nighttime high tide was. But it's a weird thing about like George not understanding how the moon works. Like, cause it's always like nighttime comes, the moon rises. And it's like, well, that's not, sometimes the moon is up during the daytime, like there's never a reference of the moon being up during the daytime in Ice and Fire, which is a kind of a funny thing. Now, yeah, I don't know why how one would come to the calculation of 8 p.m. or any time. I mean, I just kind of picked midnight, that if it's like that the moon is somehow like consistently like coming up at nighttime in Ice and Fire. It's weird stuff. The George does not understand how the moon works. Carmine, what's your favorite cooking channel?
Oh, dude, that's a whole fucking like that's a whole long explanation. I have so many, like Food Wishes, the OG. Yeah, you've seen Food Wishes before, right?
No, I haven't.
Really? You know, like his intro is legendary. Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with. He's cool. Adam Ragusia, probably the best pizza making video on the website. He's pretty good too. Ethan Chabowski, the ginger, he's pretty good. Really? Try out Food Wishes. Food Wishes is the OG.
um, do you think YG can be good in Fight in the Long Night? I mentioned that's Young Griff. I mean, I think he's probably a fine person. He could conceivably fight in the Long Night, but I think Danny will probably kill him before he gets the chance. But you know, that's an issue. But he could. I think there's nothing particularly wrong about Young Griff. He seems like a regular normal character. I mean, there's like one moment where he like loses his temper, but like everybody loses their temper. More Klingon than Klingon. It's kind of a thing. This is something somebody. Yeah, sometimes they call this being more royal than the king. Like some people are super insecure about not being something, so they like go overboard. There's actually a theory about Islam that the countries where people are the biggest religious extremists tend to actually be the non-Arab speaking countries, because the Arabs are like, look, we're Arabs, we're Muslims, like there's no insecurity there, despite the fact that like there's a lot of Christian Arabs, and it doesn't. But nonetheless, like when you tend to see like the harsher Islam of like more conservative Islam, you tend to think like Berbers in North Africa. You think of Persians. You think of Afghans. You think of Pakistanis. You think of various sects of Indonesians. You tend not to think of like, with the exception of Saudi Arabia, like you know. But that's the thing, is like Saudi Arabia is there, and the Gulf states, and I can also think of like plenty of like non-Arab countries that are pretty liberal with their Islam, like Albania or like Turkey or northern Cyprus, you know. So it's just kind of a random theory that like some people try to be more royal than the king, and so they go overboard. And this is what's going on in Worf and Spock's mind, that they had to pretend to be more Klingon than Klingon because they were not really, you know, Spock being only half Klingon and Worf being raised by humans and things like that. Glidus is like, come to Brazil, we love you in Brazil. And somebody's like, aren't you in Australia? It's like, yeah, he's in Australia. Preston is misgendering. Yeah, look, you know, I'm gonna make mistakes. Keep in mind that like I'm raised in a world I'm raised in a world where sex and gender and things like that were one way when I was a kid, and like it's very difficult as an old man to just like automatically like switch all of your lingo, and it can be very complicated later on when trying to explain things to people, like all the time. Like, oh God, like raising a kid, they ask you these questions like is that a man? Like my kid who's 3 is like, will point to people and be like, is that a man? And I'd be like, no, that's a woman. Is that a woman? No, that's a man. And he'll like try to understand, and he'll be like, you know, like bringing up random stuff. He'll be like, Daddy has short hair. Yeah. I have short hair. Yeah. Do boys have short hair? And I'm like, yeah, most of the time, you know, like So then he sees a man with long hair, and he's like, "Is that a man?" I was like, "Well, that's a man with long hair." And like it's very, very difficult. Like he's trying to figure it out, and then like trying to explain to him everything. And granted, this is the world. Like it's the world is complicated and hard, but people are going to make mistakes, and so like with Carmine and like misgendering Emma Darcy, like he probably didn't mean to do it. It was just a fucking accident.
What do you mean probably? Of course I didn't mean to do it. Context and intent matter. Context and intent are king.
I mean, the funny thing is that
what
you're
you
being
were
like
saying-
you're praising her like in the post, and it's just like
Oh yeah, no,
totally
I was hoping you. By the way, misgendered Emma Darcy again. Aha.
yeah, no, I mean
No,
I'm gonna mislabel people because my
you know
brain
why though?
fucks up. But I mean I
You know
call
why?
I
I'll
call
explain
my
to you why.
youngest son my second youngest son's name all the time. Like my brain just is gonna fucking make like you gotta give some you gotta realize people make mistakes and they do things they don't mean, like even though
Well, it's
like
not
you've
that.
seen even in this, like I even though I'm completely pro-choice, like every once in a while I'll call a fetus a baby, like I don't believe a fetus is a baby, but like the words get complicated and you start like using random words at different times, like so it's just people are going to do this sort of stuff.
But it's as simple as you've been on this planet for 40 some odd years, and for most of those years, whenever you hear a feminine name, you think she, her. Whenever you hear a
Mm-hmm.
masculine name, you think he, him. You see, you hear someone named Matthew, oh, he, him. When you
Right.
hear someone named Emma, she, her. Like,
Sure.
come on.
Yeah.
Context
Absolutely.
and intent matters. People know you're not Matt Walsh. People know you're not Ben Shapiro. People know you're not an asshole. Context.
I think
and
I
intent
recently
matters.
saw a stand-up comedian talking about it, and he's like liberals and conservatives are like two different people playing Jenga. Like liberals are sitting around being like, okay, I have to very carefully have the right political belief and very carefully use the right language to describe something, very carefully. And then a conservative just kind of walks in drunk and is like, "You guys are playing Jenga, trannies," and like knocks over the whole fucking Jenga thing, and he just like doesn't give a fuck, And that's the world. That's the word. That's the world we live in. So, what do you make of Robert attempting to send Jamie Lannister away at the beginning of book 1? I'm trying to think of the context. Wasn't there something with him being named Warden of the East? And but I'm trying to remember like where he sent off to, or what Robert was trying to do. It's not ringing a bell. I know, obviously after the, obviously after he gets in the fight with Ned, he like takes off. But I'm trying to, I need a little more context because I'm actually forgetting what Robert was doing with Jamie, trying to send him away.
Wasn't this at the beginning conversation with Ned and Robert about Ned protesting, being surprised that Robert would name Jamie Warden of the East after the whole John Aaron thing? Wasn't that like?
Yeah,
Wasn't
there's
that it?
something there's some odd stuff that related to like the Erie and Sweet Robin and the fostering, that was getting kind of, let's see if I can bring something up here. Oh right, John Aaron was the Warden of the East, so, and the Aarons have always been the Wardens of the East, so Jamie being a Warden of the East was like a scandal, because he didn't want to name the Aaron boy because Sweet Robin looked weak, and so I don't know if it necessarily has to do with. I'm not sure if Jamie would Jamie have to leave. Um, Lysa commanded us to call her son. Yeah. See, it's an odd thing because like would Jamie have to go to the Vale, but at the same time he's still a Kingsguard, so his place would be in King's Landing. It's very odd. Like I always think the Warden thing is kind of a very silly title thing, because it's like it's never really a situation where you're like, oh my gosh, he's been named Warden of the North. That means he has all these different powers than he had before to call his own like banners and stuff like that. Like I don't get it. You know, they're making this
How would Tyler feel about that?
big deal about Jaime Lannister being the Warden of the East, and it's like, how does this affect anything? I never really understood it. Here, I think I can link you the Westeros moon phase calculator. It's nice to determine when people can sight signals in glass candles. Like, I know the phases of the moon situation, but like when the moon rising times and dropping times are the setting times are, I don't know if that's necessarily it calculates the moonrise and set for each day. Okay. I mean, I'll have to look at this. It's like, does the phase of the moon, would the phase of the moon determine, like on our Earth, the moon rises and falls at different times. I didn't know that had to do with the phase. And I don't know if like the moon rises and falls at different times in Westeros. It sounds like the moon always rises at the same time in Westeros, which is an odd thing. But doubt there'll be a battle of steel. Doran might be fooled into pledging for Aegon with Marjorie's fate, Tommen's death, the Tyrells bail back to Highgarden. I don't think Doran's fooled into anything. You know, there's no Doran's not going to be tricked into anything he doesn't want to do, because it's Doran here. But you know, a battle of steel. I mean, if there wouldn't be, it would just mean like all of the Tyrell soldiers just arrived and switched sides, right? There has to be a battle between, but I don't think they would have set up. George would have set up having half of the Golden Company missing if there wasn't all of a sudden a reveal of that other half arriving and doing something, you know? So in that sense, it seems like there would be a battle. Now, whether George planned on having it on screen or off screen is another question. But I think he definitely wanted there to be some sort of battle. Why bring all of these? Why have a bunch of missing elephants as a Chekhov's gun? I'm going to go to the bathroom for a second. You're welcome to talk about an issue, entertain people while I go to the bathroom.
Ah, shit! I had to go to the bathroom too. It's all right. Go ahead. Oh, whoops! I was muted the whole time. Haha. Glidus, where you been, by the way? I feel bad for you, by the way, Glidus. Every time I hit up Glidus privately, I don't know if people know this. I do this with everybody. Whenever I hit someone up privately, I'll say, "Hey, man, are you free for like a 3-minute, 5-minute discussion?" And it turns into like an almost 2-hour discussion. So, yeah. But now that I'm on here, I have to say this live stream itself, was brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends, the fantastic dark fantasy RPG that's now available on PC.
What are you doing, Sky? What are you doing? I was like, Sky. See, I'm like calling karma on my son's name.
I thought you said Scott for a minute.
Sky. My son's name is Sky. Skylar. Yeah, we call him Sky. So I accidentally called you Sky for a second. That's how my brain is. I know. I'm just gonna call you a she and call you Sky. Okay. In your fanfic, do you plan on Barristan winning the Battle of Meereen and meeting young Aegon? Plot twist. LLL. Oh, I'm gonna eat. It's really, really difficult for me to see Barristan winning the Battle of Fire. I mean, there's various things I can see, like it being a standstill and things like that. But they have these elephants. They have this huge army. We would need like I could see something like the Lazarene coming in and like taking Yunkai or something, and then forcing everyone to leave. Or I could see Meereen like not taken, but like the actual field on the ground where Barristan is, just seems like it's just seems like it's doomed for him. I just don't see how he can win that. Like just looking at the numbers, like I understand that in the Barristan and Tyrion sample chapters, things are going really well for them, but then there's always a turn. There's always a flip. And when you look at the numbers, like what Yunkai has, it's just overwhelming. They just have so many forces. I just don't understand how they could possibly win. And I think was Barristan only trying to do a sortie? Like, did he really think he was going to win the battle at that time by coming out, or do you plan on going back? And in which case, like the gates will probably be closed because the Shave Pate doesn't want to let him back in. So it doesn't look good for Barristan. Like whether Barristan will die, I don't know, but it certainly doesn't look good for him. We have a lot of points of view in Slaver's Bay. We don't need that many points of view. I mean, I like Barristan. I like Barristan a lot, but it's like, you know, do you kill off Tyrion and leave Barristan? That would be something. But I just can't. I don't understand how Barristan could win. Like the only way to win is if you had like a bunch of Dothraki or a bunch of Lazarene coming in to like take everybody out. But at least in the Daenerys chapters, we kind of established that the Dothraki have gone back to Vastoth Rock. The Saudi royal family are criminals supplying the Pakistani who fund terrorist organizations. Saudi royal family is enormous. I mean, but I don't know if the Saudi royal family is supplying Pakistanis anymore. And which Pakistanis? Like Pakistan is also like not a cohesive group. So it's a bit, you know, it's a big kind of statement. Like who is supplying whom? One thing that Saudi Arabia does is they give a lot of money to various mosques around the world to make them more Wahhabi-like, and then the people kind of end up in a more extremist mindset. But it's like whether the Saudis realize they're doing that, like, you know, is another thing. Like, you could say that the Saudis are creating extremists, but they don't realize that they're doing it. They don't realize that they're creating, you know, terrorists. You know, they you know, versus like actually funding a terrorist organization. It's tough to pin down a direct link of Saudi Arabia like funding terrorist organization versus like just funding mosques that might be frequented by terrorists, you know, or something like that. You know, you'd have a tough time like pinning down like direct proof there. Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn will teach you about the others. Sidhe, but Ice, completely new perspective. All right. Somehow people are talking about like Pashtuns in India and Afghanistan. Generally, the Pashtun nationalism is kind of the big problem there's a lot of problems in Afghanistan and Pakistan, but like Pashtun nationalism is probably the biggest, where like a lot of Pashtuns believe Afghanistan is theirs, like, and that the other minority groups need to leave, and that and so if once they get rid of the Hazari and the Tajiks and the Uzbeks, then Afghanistan will be pure, and so it tends to be that the Pashtun nationalists are the ones that are really like causing trouble. Can you go over why the Greyjoys declared their independence and other events from 288, 289? Also, didn't Mance defect around that time? It's difficult to say Mance's timeline. Mance's timeline doesn't really make sense. Everything we know about Mance's life is contradictory. Like, who is his dad? Is his dad a wildling? Is he a crow? Was he raised in the Watch? Did he come back to the Watch? Like, there's a lot of different stories. Like Osha doesn't think Mance is wildling enough. So it's really difficult to say about like when Mance's defection is. Let me see here. What we've been told about him like just doesn't make much sense. Let's see here. So according to Celise Florent, Mance's parents were a common woman of the Free Folk and a man of the Night's Watch. And so, but for some reason he was raised with the wildlings and then taken in and raised with the Night's Watch. After some raiders were put to the sword by the Night's Watch. And so then he became like a ranger of the Shadow Tower. And then he somehow like, he was with Commander Corgyle when he came to meet Eddard, according to Mance. But we have such a broad period of time on like when he could have defected. It could have been 286. It could have been later. It's difficult to say. I guess he says years later after meeting Corgyle and Ned Stark. So it could be any time. Nothing really makes sense about Mance. We just don't have that much information on him. I mean, it could be 289. But yeah, like why the Greyjoys declared independence when they did, it's difficult to say like why. Greyjoy Rebellion. Were we ever given a reason? He just just seeing when Balon's father died, because that's no, he dies in like 283 during there's no reason given to why the Greyjoy Rebellion happened when it did. So I suppose we can just keep the conspiracies going of like how the Greyjoy Rebellion in 289 might relate to like Doran's plans with Tyrosh and Dany leaving the house with the Red Door in 289. And if maybe Mance Raider could defect around the same time. But there's such disparate things that it's very, very difficult to get them all together. So I mean, I have not like had a grand 289 like theory that pieces it together. And I mean, even connecting like Doran and Tyrosh and the House of the Red Door, which I did some, um, is one thing, but it's really difficult to pull in the Ironborn and then to pull in Mance Raider all at the same time. Crazy amount of big picture thinking for a theory on that. Let's see here. Oh, we're back to the warden positions are military, right? But like, I understand that they're supposed to be that, but like, when we actually see wars happen on the ground, everyone seems to be leading their houses. So like, for example, like Mace Tyrell being the Warden of the South. As Warden of the South, shouldn't he be leading the Dornish host? Like, yet we don't see that. We don't see him leading the Dornish host in Robert's Rebellion. We don't see him leading the Dornish host during the War of the Five Kings. Yet he's the Warden of the South. You know, so does Warden of the South just mean like the military leader over the Reach? You know, like is Storm's End's forces in the Warden of the South? It's you know, it's like a title that doesn't ever have any use. Like, everyone talks about these titles as being super important, but it just they're never actually used in practice. You know, even if we take something like, you know, Warden of the West, like, why weren't they leading the Frey forces in either the War of the Five Kings or Robert's Rebellion? It's just like almost completely irrelevant, like military titles that no one follows because everyone just follows their lords. um, Let's see. Robert was having dreams of war, and he was making actions based on those dreams. Was naming Jamie Warden of the East in a way to release him of his oath. No, and I don't think no one ever discussed releasing Jamie from his oath. I mean, he specifically says to Ned that he was not going to name Robert, Sweet Robin Robert, Warden of the East, because he was a sickly boy, and that was pretty much it. And so, well, if you're not going to name Sweet Robin, you know, who are you going to name? I guess throw a bone to the Lannisters for no reason. Like, obviously it makes more sense to name Bronzeon Royce Warden of the East, like, than name Jaime Lannister, like some guy that's in King's Landing. But I don't know. I'm in this tough situation where it's like, these titles seem like complete bullshit to me. How am I supposed to think that, like, Jaime Lannister being named Warden of the East is supposed to be like the significant thing when I don't even see like being Warden of the East, North, South, and West like being like significant. Like, no one fucking cares. So I don't, you know, if someone could explain to me why these titles are actually really important and when they actually like made a difference in story, I would love to know. And then maybe I can like look back and be like, huh, what would that responsibility entail for Jaime Lannister? You know, who's Lord Commander of the, well, I guess he's not Lord Commander until Barristan leaves, so he's not Lord Commander yet. Is my established title's Lord title not legit? It was not legit. The Legal Eagle has a pretty big takedown of established titles. Will only Glidus eat the book? Did Glidus say something that he's supposed to eat the book if it comes out?
I think that's something like that.
Hmm. I mean, does Glidus not think it's ever coming out? I mean, it's a pretty valid opinion to think that the book's never coming out.
I forgot if it's if he hits 100K and then he'll eat it, or if it comes out then he'll eat it. I forgot.
Yeah, I'll have to explain. Yeah. Has Carmine convinced you to read Berserk yet? I've read some. Gladys is here. Hello, hello. Are you there?
Hello, howdy.
Hey, how's it going? What's this about
Good,
you
I just
eating a
wanted to
book?
clear up. Yeah, so I'm gonna eat the book. Initially it started as a joke. Someone asked me if Hollow Knight Silk Song would come out before or after. It's a video game, obviously. Would come out before or after the Winds of Winter, and I said that if the Winds of Winter came out first, I would eat it. Like, that's how sure I was that it wouldn't happen. And from there, it just became my like default response to something being unlikely. To the point where like I was thinking about it, and I was like, "Well, hang on. If I actually did that, like that's good clickbait, right?
That's true. If you actually ate a book,
You would click on that.
I would. I'd be like,
Yeah,
well, how hard is it
exactly.
to eat a book?
Well, let's find out together." And so I said, going into House of the Dragon, I said, if I hit 100,000 subs by the time the show ends or the season ends, I'll do it. I'll eat the Winds of Winter when it comes out, if it comes out. And I fell behind on the videos, and I moved the deadline to when I finish making my videos about the season, which like I absolutely will hit 100,000 before then. If that doesn't
Yeah.
happen, something's gone terribly wrong. And so yeah, that's going to happen should the book eventuate.
Like,
I
I don't
also
think
wanted
you're
to
going
clear
to be
up the
eating this book.
Warden.
I don't think you're going to be eating Winds of Winter until 2025. I mean, at early.
Well, I'll have a time to like build up a resistance to ink then, and whatever weird shit is in the glue that holds the pages together.
This is the other like
My brother is a doctor, and he tells me that I just shouldn't do this. But what does he know?
I mean,
What does he know?
whatever medical school can teach you. I mean, there's probably not a class on paper eating.
Exactly. So that he's not going to help me.
Do people also think that like the Doors of Stone is never coming out? You know, like the King Killer Chronicles. Like, which one? Like, do people do bets on which one which one of those is going to come out first?
I bet there's a circle of people who talk about this. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was also wondering, like, can you explain to me at any point when where being warden of the north, south, east, or west meant anything?
Right, so in my mind, it's just like, so George uses the title Lord Paramount of the Trident to signify that the Tullys just like have a rulership over the other lords of that region. And I think that Warden is like a similar level that's just like conferred on, because Ned is never referred to as Lord Paramount of the North. He's Warden of the North. So I think that's it's like the similar level thing that he just wanted a cool word. But I think in terms of like a lore explanation, I think it's a historical holdover from Aegon's time, because he installed the Tyrells as an intentional defense against the Dornish, right? And the Lannisters were there to defend against the Ironborn and so on.
Now, I will say there is one reference to in the World of Ice and Fire, so I don't know if it really counts. But there's one reference to Lord Paramount of the Mander in the World of Ice and Fire.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that really counts. Like what? Like, you know, the stuff that's in the World of Ice and Fire.
It's so weird that they're like, and that's like a connected title to Warden of the South, because the Warden of the South is always the Lord of Highgarden,
right?
But it seems that like Robert's just gonna hand the Warden of the East, which doesn't mean anything, but kind of does to Jamie Lannister. Yeah, no, it is definitely weird.
Right. So if it only refers to the kingdom as well, like Warden of the East is Vale, Warden of the West is Westerlands, Warden of the North is the North, and Warden of the South is the Reach. Who and then Lord Paramount of the Trident is the Riverlands. Who the fuck is like in the Stormlands and Dorne? Or is the just Dorne you're just the fucking Prince of Dorne?
Yeah, I think you're just the fucking Prince of Dawn, and I think that the Lord Paramount. See, I play the Crusader Kings 2 mod, which uses Lord Paramount for all of these things. Like, if you're in charge of the North, you're Lord Paramount of the North. So that's like my brain's fried because of that. But I think there might be reference to Lord Paramount of the Stormlands. Probably not though.
In Crusader Kings.
No, in the series. No, there is.
Well, I just did
There is
a search, but maybe it's I went on a search.
According to the wiki, it is mentioned in the Game of Thrones appendix.
Oh, that's why it's not on the search. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me bring up the appendices. Fucking always appendices always getting me.
I know.
A while back I was like talking about the retcon of making Rhaenyra and Aegon II half siblings, and somebody's like, I've read this series a million times. Like, what are you talking about? Them only being like, there being a retcon and them being only a year apart. Right. And I was like, dude, it's in the Game of Thrones appendix. It's like I can understand that like you could read the series like 20 times and know it inside and out.
Yeah,
you didn't read the fucking appendix, which is why would you read the fucking appendix?
That's how they get. You didn't read the terms and conditions.
Okay, now I've got to fucking find. Does it say which is it in like Dance with Dragons, a Game of Thrones?
I think it's a Game of Thrones.
Fucking A. I'm in this. Well, not this like random things I'm going down. Like, no, we're gonna find this fucking Lord Paramount shit.
Yeah, and like it's so irrelevant, but also you're gonna put the time in, and it takes so much time to figure this stuff out.
Oh yeah, because the thing is,
I think most watchers do not value the amount of time it takes to verify all the claims we make, and they're gonna notice the one thing we didn't get right.
Oh yeah. And that's the funny thing. I always get this on this with like school and stuff, where like, you can spend countless hours writing a paper, and the paper can be fucking genius, and like, but if you have a typo on page 3, somebody's gonna circle it and be like, this is how much care and time you put into this and you're like, no, it's a fucking typo. Like, I'm gonna make a mistake.
Minor spelling mistake.
Yeah, exactly. But this is the whole thing about like anecdote and trend. Like, you can always like find an anecdote to like try to well, I have been through at least the appendices.
I've just looked as well. I can't find it.
Yeah, I can't find it. Yeah.
Maybe the wiki is lying. That also
the wiki
happens.
Being
the wiki
wrong.
Yeah. Did you imagine?
Oh my lord. These other things is like the wiki will like refer to the app. Like sometimes, and you're like, well, the app is just like the wiki, like kind of like that's circular citation, kind of. Is there supposed to be like additional information in the app? Like, there's no way George is reviewing that app.
Absolutely not. And I think it's like, it always says according to a semi-canon source. As soon as it says that, I'm like,
Like, have you ever figured out where the fucking sigils come from? You know how they always say, like, according to semi, and then you click on it and it goes to Westeros.org's, like, heraldry thing. I'm like, where the fuck did this come from? And then
I have always assumed that it was like George describing things to artists in like 2002 or something.
like there was a role-playing game that that the role-playing game used to be mentioned a lot more in the wiki, but then all the role-playing game stuff has been kind of scrubbed. But I wonder if like a bunch of artists created stuff for this like role-playing game that George like later like went and was just like, yeah, sure, fine, sounds good. Specifically with the there's a weird one with Theodore, is it Wells house? There, who's the guy?
Oh yeah.
There's the guy who escorts Cersei during her walk of shame. And I forgot his name. Theodore. Is it Wells?
Theodan?
Yeah.
It is. It's Theodan Wells.
Theodan Wells. And this always gets me because, like, you hear the last name Wells, and in the book, there's only one fucking house Wells, and they're in Dorne.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, you've got this, like, the wiki talks about how Theodan Wells is from the north. And you're like, really? You're gonna take a Faith of the Seven follower, and you're gonna fucking throw him in the north. Okay, I get it. There's White Harbor and shit, but like, really, like, you're gonna create this fake house in the north that like worships the Faith of the Seven to not have it be like the same Wells and what is it according to? It's like,
yeah, the Westeros.org heraldry page where it says arms unknown and there's no source on it.
Yeah. Because the source
I really
used
do want
to
to
be
know
the
where
what
that
it used to be
from.
there was a role playing game that they were going to as the source. And
is that the Fantasy Flight game?
I think it was that. And they scrubbed it. They scrubbed it, but somehow this page is still here. I'm looking at House Wells of the North. Like, there's no source on this shit. On why Theodan the True would be from House Wells of the North. Like, that just sounds ridiculously stupid, but fine, whatever. Because it also takes away from my nice Dornish conspiracies, where you've got like a nice Dornish person escorting Cersei around, and you're gonna somehow make him.
Wiki is wrong. It disagrees with my theory.
my headcanon says this. How dare your headcanon violate my headcanon?
It's so interesting the things that people read into the text that isn't that, and then they're like, sorry, I read a lot of YouTube comments and they get in my head, and it's like you see so many people just reporting their wild interpretation of the text as gospel. I'm sure you're familiar with this. Hell, it's your living. No, I'm kidding. I actually really appreciate. I've never said this to you. I really appreciate that. At the end of every like seminar you give, you say, "Yeah, but that's mostly crap, isn't it? That's mostly bull crap." What I just said. Like, you go out of your way to point out that this is just like an exploration of ideas. That's something I really appreciate.
Right. I mean, it's like earlier in the stream when somebody's like, "Could Elia Martell be totally into like a three-way with Lyanna?" And it's like, well,
oh god.
But the thing is, like you can't prove a negative, right? Like, this is a dead woman that there's literally like 6 lines written about. Like, could she be totally into like Lyanna Stark going down on her? You know, in like, maybe, I don't know. Like, let's bring out some fan art of Elia Martell and Lyanna Stark, like Muff Munch and Elia Martell. Like, I'm down. Like,
I'm on it.
Jesus. There's nothing in the text that says that couldn't happen. I guess so.
I actually have seen people cite fan art as like a source for their theories, and I'm like, what are we doing here?
Like, we want like, you know, both like Lyanna and Ilya like riding Rhaegar like while he's playing a leer, like one over his face and one over.
Oh no.
Could happen. Could happen. Carmine, have you convinced me to read Berserk yet?
I don't know.
I
Do
looked
you
at a
want
few
to?
pages of it. It seemed pretty intense, but Carmine has actually been kind of anti me reading it because he's like, dude, it's just a lot of work. Like it's great, but it's a lot.
Just watch the movies. Don't watch the show. Just watch the movies. The movies are great. The 3 movies, they're fucking phenomenal. I recommend them to anybody.
Yeah. Glidus, have you read any Berserk?
Nah.
Have you seen the fantasy news
You
guy?
gotta get on that, dude.
Have you seen the fantasy news guy? You know, he's kind of a young blonde guy who like puts out like a massive number of videos and seems like he's on cocaine.
I was gonna say Daniel Green, but
yeah, that's him.
Who?
Yeah.
Dragon Demands? Like what's? Oh, first off, okay, hold on. Daniel Green is not on coke. I'm pretty sure.
I mean, he
he's
makes
not.
jokes about it. He makes jokes. He
Oh, does he?
Like, he like burns himself because he's just like because he recognizes that he's like overly motivated in all of his videos, and he like puts out videos constantly. Like the guy must be like he is grinding hard because like I don't know how he's watching all of the things he's watching and reading all of the things he's reading and putting out videos every day. Like it's just like, oh my god, you're doing nothing else. Like I know exactly how much work he's putting in. Like and it's just way too
I
much.
joked in my videos that like I didn't even have time to watch a second fantasy show. Like I still haven't seen Rings of Power.
Oh, dude, get on that. What are you?
Yeah,
What are you
put
waiting
it
for? Get
on.
that.
Can you put it on double speed?
Sure. Maybe I'll watch it over Christmas. Who knows?
While eating the Christmas pud. Is the pud thing?
Hit me with that pud.
Is the pud thing funnier to an Aussie than the rest of us? Like,
what pud thing? There's a pud thing?
There's a pud thing. It's an anti-Donna pud thing. Where like they're like always room for pud. And then they're like talking about Christmas.
Mustn't have seen that one.
Yeah. I watched it. I'm like, I don't think this is that funny, but I think maybe to an Aussie, like joking about pud is funnier.
I mean, now that you say that is, I get the idea. I get why that's funny. Oh yeah, smash some pud.
That's exactly, essentially the entire skit is them. They're like, oh, I'm so full.
Okay, no, this is
they're using like Aussie lingo, and they're like, oh, I'm so full. They're like, oh, but what about the pud? And they're like, oh, pud. Oh, there's always room for pud. Oh, you got to give me some pud. Yeah. That's
this has become funny. Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, now you get it. Let's see. The Victorian horn causes Barristan to get crushed on accident. Viserion or Rhaegal burn Victorian's fleet, stranding them, leaving two very confused forces facing off. I mean, that would be fun and all, but if I'm thinking about like what's been semi-telegraphed from a semi-canon source from George on what's happening at that battle, there seems to be banner confusion. So like Victorian is carrying a Targaryen banner and he's blowing a horn, and Barristan has a horn and he's got a dude carrying a banner, and if that dude falls and his horn carrier falls, then when people see a horn and they see a banner, they're going to head towards Victorian, and so they're heading in the wrong direction. Like, you know, say Barristan wants to retreat and he's like, okay, horn, come to the banners, and it's like, fuck no, everybody's heading to Victorian because he blew a horn and he's got Targaryen banners. So I think there's definitely a lot of confusion. There's going to be a lot of confusion at the battle, where forces are heading the wrong direction. So
and is that going to be like a mirror to the Battle of Steel?
I think so. I think
Yeah,
all of these things are like referencing each other. Like when people when they
yeah.
um
He's just writing the same battle 4 times.
it's true. I mean, you've got elephants in the east, you've got confusion over banners. Um plus Battle of the Blackwater, like over and over again. Secret things in the holds of ships. Whether it be blood or whether it be like a Targaryen or a Greyjoy force, or whether it be wildfire and things
Oh,
like
wildfire. Yeah.
that. They're all described the same. Which, like, I do wonder if it was George. He just had writer's block, so he's just like, fuck it, it's a parallel. I'll just pull a George Lucas, and it's like rhyming. It's poetry. Because he didn't have anything else to write. But that's so Barristan could get crushed, but there's a lot of other things that could be coming for Barristan, like the fact that I think the pit fighters are going to want to kill Barristan. They might turn on him because of his dishonorable ways that he killed the other pit fighters, and him wearing armor and fighting who is the pit fighter that he fights in Hisdar's chambers. These are these random names.
Hazu.
Yes, Harzu. Is it this? I forget if it's. I'm looking at this list. I'm like, is it Belliquo Bonebreaker? No, no. Is it? Like, it's one of them. It's either Belliquo, Brindle Butcher, Cameron the Count, Gorgor the Giant, Fearless, Ithok, Kraz, Marigo, Orlos, Sandog, Sanera, Spotted Cat, Steelscutter, Torgosh. One of them. It's one of them.
Well, it's definitely not Sandok. I can tell you that.
He's my favorite.
People do that though. George has talked about how people latch on to characters who have absolutely nothing written about them just because, like, the single line he wrote about them sounds cool.
It's like, who's your favorite brave companion? I think it's Iggy. Isn't there like one of the random ones that Arya kills is Nymeria? There's a random Dothraki that has, sometimes art is created by
Ego.
Like he has art for Swampy Meg, who is literally just
Fucking
a
who?
name in an appendix. Yeah,
That's great. I really value that he's gone out of his way to make art for people that have no art, except for what's the guy's name? The Valarian dude, the brother.
Salador San? No, he's done one for Salador San.
Monford Valarian.
Oh,
There's no art.
that it does sometimes frustrate me that he'll have like all of these characters from the Golden Company who like are just in the appendix, or he has Ego.
Yeah.
Is a brave companion who is in the background and is just kind of like killed by Nymeria and has completely forgettable character, but he will not have somebody fairly major. I'm trying to think of somebody fairly major off the top of my head, and I'm blanking. But
No, I've encountered that before back when I used his art.
Like Ned, he just won't have something for Ned. Let's see here. Thoughts on Tywin's quote about "Tell me how it is more noble to kill thousands in battle than dozens at dinner." Did he have a point? I think he does have a point. I think because I think the same point is made by Pycelle. That I think the I think he is making a point, but I think the point George R. R. Martin is making is goes the other way. That like the Red Wedding seems really horrible. Like you're just murdering a bunch of people, right? And so Tywin is saying like, oh, what I'm doing is actually like just as noble as war. And I think George R. R. Martin is saying, yeah, it's just as noble as war. Meaning like every battle is just as bad as the Red Wedding. You know, like bringing people in and slaughtering them on the battlefield is just as bad as the Red Wedding, you know. Especially like, you know, it's just that what if a few more people of yours die, that's somehow more noble. Like if, you know, that if your small folk die and a bunch of his small folk die at the same time, then somehow that's like legit. Like, no, not really. Like you're just killing a bunch of people. So I think it's more, it's in that sense. I mean, obviously we're also supposed to think about like the morality of like the train, you know, the train situation, the train memes of like, you know, when you pull a lever to change the course of a train in order to kill one instead of killing five, and what's the morality of it? I think Cosmic Skeptic does a lot of these videos on morality, and there's when doing surveys. So say you ask somebody about like the train problem. Okay, a train is barreling towards five people, and you have a switch, and you can change the course of the train to kill one. The initial morality situation. Now you could logically say, well, I'm saving four. I'm saving five people and only killing one. It's better in a utilitarian sense. But others would say, well, but you're actively getting involved. You're switching the train. Therefore, you're actively murdering somebody. While before, you could just like say nothing, you know. And in that situation, most people actually do pull the lever and kill the one to save the five. But when you switch it up and you say, okay, there's five people on the track, and you're on top of a bridge, and if you push a fat man off of the bridge into the train, causing the train to stop, you'll save the five people while killing the one fat man. When given that situation, like personalizing the person and making it a push instead of a switch and things like that, it goes down. All of a sudden people are like, I don't want to push the one fat man, you know.
So you're saying the Red Wedding is basically like a trolley problem, but on a bigger scale, maybe?
Yeah, the trolley problem. I think it is. And I think he's just sort of like trying to say that immorality is hard, and that we can't, even though I'm a utilitarian, I think that he's trying to say that pure utilitarianism isn't necessarily like morality either, that there has to be some sort of like other way. But I don't think he's not a deontologist either, so it's difficult. He's just bringing up the negatives of both sides, deontology versus utilitarianism, and saying that like
he's taking the very hard stance that morality is confusing.
Yes.
Good job, George.
Good job, George. Yeah. It beat down on Ned's head, warm and as blood and relentless as old guilt's. Fat drops of water ran down his face. Ned killed his buds to save baby John. So in Ned's like blackness of the cell, he does have a lot of weird feelings about guilt and broken promises. And one of my big problems with people kind of pulling out the fandom, Ned was an honorable dude, and he saved John from being killed by Robert, and that's why he lied about John being his own bastard and all of this. He was actually being super honorable. Like Ned wasn't like honorable with like a moment of not being honorable. He was actually super honorable, which is like the fandom like belief that they eventually did in the show. Okay. So, but my problem with that interpretation is that Ned clearly feels guilty. Like he clearly feels guilty and he feels there are broken promises. And so like with the interpretation that Ned is super honorable and did everything like great. What are the broken promises? Like what's the broken promise? And no one's ever been able to tell me what the fucking broken promise is. Like, what could possibly be the broken promise if Ned did everything great?
Look, if I'm being super charitable, you could say that it's like something super specific, like, hey, can you take care of this kid and also not lie to your wife about who he is? And like, that's just so contrived at that point, right?
Yeah. Yeah, at that point, you just be like, what do you, like, well, she's on her deathbed and she's in a fever, so I don't really have to fucking follow her.
Sure, yeah, I'll play along.
Anyway. So,
whatever you want.
Like if I like honestly, if you were Ned Stark and you did what Ned Stark did, like there's not a day I would feel guilty. I'd be like, nope, I did the right thing. Like I saved a baby's life. Like yeah, it really sucks that my wife has to think that I had an affair, even though like we essentially spent 1 week together and we didn't know each other and I was off at war. Like you'd think she'd get over that shit. But no, yeah, after fucking 15 years, but no, like it's gonna be like, that's what I'm gonna feel guilty about. No, like Ned has no reason to feel guilty. You know, like I would not feel guilty in that situation. I'd be like, I positively did the right thing. I positively.
Well, then, if we do away with the presupposition that that Ned did the honorable thing, and like maybe he didn't do the honorable thing, what do you think the broken promise is? Do you still think that it relates to Daenerys?
I mean, if I'm going with like Daenerys being a dragon seed, then I guess. I guess it has to do with Ashara. It has something to do with Ashara then.
Okay.
You know, that like his love with her and like she had said like, no, you promised to do something this. At Harrenhal, we promised to do this and this, and you didn't do that promise. And he betrayed Ashara.
Oh, so it's not the promise that he makes to Lyanna in the dream? That seems like a bit...
I think it's a crossover, right? Like, you know, it's like Sansa saying,
okay,
promise me. And then he like, he thinks about the Lyanna promise me, but then it makes him think about the Ashara promise me, right? That's
right, yeah. Memories are confusing.
Right? And it's just like so George. And the only reason I kind of think that it relates to the Ashara thing is just kind of like dying of the light kind of stuff with like the whisper jewel and the promise you make to like ex-girlfriends and shit like that. Like I just don't understand why Ned would be haunted by like Lyanna's promise me.
Doing the right thing.
Right. Like he didn't even fucking...
the time I did what my sister told me to do, it haunts me.
Right. Like it's like, plus it's like it's something he would have done anyway. Like he didn't need the promise, right? Like, oh, this is my bastard.
What else was he going to do?
What else was he fucking gonna do? Why did he need like, oh well, she made me promise. I'm Ned Stark. I was just
gonna give the baby to Robert, yeah.
Like but my sister said promise me, and so I had to keep that promise. Like the whole situation is fucking stupid when you like put it in the classic interpretation. Like, promise me. Like, he would have fucking saved Jon anyway. He didn't need the fucking promise from Lyanna. That was fucking stupid. Like, it's the only way it's like the way that would be haunting is if she like had promised him to do something else. Like, promise me you'll kill this baby. Like, fuck. Like, well, I'm not gonna fucking do that.
And then that haunts him later on. That's crazy.
Like Lyanna said, I should kill this.
Promise me that you'll take Arthur's corpse and sword back to Starfall, and that Ashara won't kill herself, and then she does, and that's what haunts it. Something like, yeah, no, I completely see why you'd think it has to do with Ashara.
Yeah, I mean, I just can't think of anything else. I can't think of anything else that's emotionally
And Ashara is
taxing.
like just kind of a loose element in a lot of conceptions of how this all plays out, and that's one pretty good way of tying her back into all of this.
Yeah, though it might. I do admit though that like the Starfall mystery becomes like, well, all of this shit doesn't make sense. Well, I guess it'll be answered in the fucking Starfall mystery. Like it, you know,
Yeah.
it's kind of like using prophecy as like the excuse for everything. Well, this person's acting completely irrationally. I guess it's because of prophecy. Well, this person, this all doesn't make any sense. I guess it has to do with fucking Ashara and Starfall. Like, I understand that it's a little bit of a fucking cop out.
That's a lot of people attribute some of the more supernatural things to like, oh well, that's to do with like the seasons being off balance, and that's going to be addressed like when that gets sorted out. It's like, well, that's not really anything that you've said there, is it?
It's not true. It's from what's the deal with the shadow babies? Well, you know, it's the return of magic and the comet and
Yeah, the Volcran. Yeah.
the Volcran. What's Illyrio's plan? Is he playing Varys? No, I think that Varys and Illyrio are on the same page. I think it's far too confusing to have them be like too far removed from each other. I think that you know, they want to put Aegon on the throne. I think that's pretty clear. I think the bigger question is what was their plan with Daenerys? And I'm not sure if it's just George fucking up, you know, because George kind of recognizes that Illyrio's plan doesn't make sense in A Dance with Dragons, and he has the Golden Company joke about this, like Illyrio's plan, his master plan that constantly changes, and then they list a bunch of fucking plans, and you know. But I think Illyrio's, in my personal belief, I think Illyrio's plan was to just get rid of Daenerys, to send her east towards Ashai with Jorah, get rid of Viserys, and then you wouldn't have another Targaryen going up against Aegon's cause. That they were a
And
problem.
are you thinking that like he gives her the dragon eggs to be like, well, just in case something happens that might lead to dragons hatching?
Yeah, or like
Or
maybe you know the people in
because I
Ashai
always thought that
requested it.
he did that on purpose to like just he wanted dragons back in the world so he could use them to conquer Westeros, but he doesn't like he knows the dragons are fucking dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that he really did think those eggs were going to hatch because he specifically gave them to Dany and not Viserys. You know, it could be that Illyrio like knew they were gonna hatch, but he was expecting Dany to die, and then he'd be able to come in and scoop up those dragons, like, which is what he tried to do after they did hatch. But
Yeah,
so maybe he
still
did
pretty
expect.
harebrained, honestly.
It is, and I do think it's mostly George not thinking it through, but certainly in
That's a
those
shame.
early chapters, it sounds like Jorah is trying to get Dany to go to Ashai and head east, and she references that as late as the Storm of Swords, and
Yeah.
then she has her dream where Viserys says like, "Why were the eggs given to you?" and stuff like that. So you know he might be right. He might want to retcon in that they wanted the dragons hatched, but they knew Aegon couldn't do it. But they wanted Aegon to have the dragons. So
I
they
don't know
have
if that'd be a retcon. Just an explanation.
yeah, just an explanation. And that
Yeah, Preston.
he wanted Aegon on the throne, but he wanted the dragons, but he knew that Dany was the only one that could hatch them, and she was a dragon seed. So he gets this random dragon seed to hatch the eggs, and then wants to pull the dragons away from her and give them to Aegon, and that's his like idea from the start, and that Dany is just like useless. She's just a useless dragon seed to hatch eggs, and that's the only purpose is to have her.
Like it's so like you'd have to have such a lack of foresight to think that you'd give this girl 3 dragons and then just be able to take them back.
It's yeah, but even if they don't hatch, giving her 3 dragon eggs is already ridiculous. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna send you off into the Dothraki Sea with like, and by the way, here's like $500,000 cash. Like, here you go. like
See ya.
wait, what? Like, you're just giving me $500,000 cash and having me wander around the fucking plains with some savages? Yes. Like, here you go. Good luck, you know. I don't know. Yeah. Has George figured any of this out? If Stannis wins, who's in charge of the North? Well, I mean,
Well, Stannis.
Stannis is in charge of the North, but who would he give like Winterfell to? I mean, I imagine he'd like hand like his big plan is to install Val in Winterfell, and then have whoever marry Val be the Lord. And so Val is more important than whoever marries her. It'd be nice if it were John. It would be nice if it were Rickon or whatever, I'm sure. But he really wanted Val because he wanted the wildlings to be on his side because he needed more men. And he saw the wildlings as a source of fighters. So it's more about putting Val in Winterfell and giving Winterfell to the wildlings in order to whether it's who happens to be around, Godry Faring, Justin, well, I guess not Justin Massey anymore, but whatever. If Clayton Suggs suits him, he'll put in Clayton Suggs.
Big Walder.
Yeah.
Big Walder marries Val, Lord of Winterfell. Let's go.
Oh, man. To get the Frey armies. Well, if there's any Freys left. Yeah, I mean,
No, just because Stannis like looks at Big Walder and he's like, I like this kid. He's gonna be Lord of Winterfell.
Yeah. You're savvy. I mean, if I were Stannis, I would make it somebody like Wyman Manderly's son.
Yeah, Wendell
Manderly. Like, realistically, like Wendell Manderly, like installing him as head if they don't get Rickon back, if they didn't get Rickon back, I would install Wendell Manderly as Lord of Winterfell to get the Manderlys, because you're talking about forces, right? You want as many men as possible, and Manderly is the one with the most men, or you save it for later. You could have this ace in the as you head south and say, well,
right, and like hand it off to a Royce or someone more important.
Exactly. Because I think I mean, I forget, it's either a Royce, a Corbray, or a Waynwood who are the actual, like,
that Catelyn thinks are the actual heirs.
Yeah, exactly. Jaime being Warden of the East is important because he's Kingsguard and he can't hold land or title. Tywin would love this proposal. Can he not hold title? Because the various Kingsguard have been handed the king.
I think they mean like a landed title.
Right, but he's not like, he's not getting income. He's not taking the taxes, right?
Yeah, and like as Kingsguard, I don't know if it really grants him that much more authority than he already could have had as a Kingsguard. Because like we don't really see what being Warden of the East means to anyone.
Yeah, this is like being what's the fucking Driftmark titles?
Lord of the Tides.
Right, but then there's Lord of the Tides, and then there's another one.
Master of Driftmark.
It's like, just Master of Driftmark and Lord of Tides. Like, imagine, like, well, I'm Master of Driftmark, but my brother has been made Lord of Tides. Like, What is
No,
it?
Idi Amin's very lengthy, like Daenerys Targaryen-esque titles.
Yeah.
When he was dictator of Uganda, he was like conqueror of the British Empire in Africa in general and Uganda in particular, lord of all the beasts of the land and fishes of the sea. I think the birds got a miss.
They were afraid.
Yeah, it's stuff like that. I think it's just prestige.
Yeah, it's just prestige in the end. Um, like why add all? Yeah, I mean it's the same as all of these different titles. Like, oh my gosh, wait, is is Prince Charles, is he no longer like Prince of York? He's now like Duke of whatever poppycock. Like they just fucking make up this shit. To a British person, they're like, no, these are very important. These are very important titles. Like,
I think Andrew was the Duke of York.
you know,
It really doesn't matter.
like that's the thing is like I don't know what a fucking I don't even know what a like if you were to honestly put a gun to my head and be like, explain to me the difference between a duke and a viceroy, I'd be like, a duke and an
Fucking
earl.
kill me.
Fucking what's the difference between a duke and an earl? Like I don't know. There was like a song called Duke of Earl. They don't mean anything.
My name is Earl.
My name is Earl. Oh. Do you think the story of the Night's King will come back into the main story somehow, and how important will it be? I think George probably had some sort of plan to have time traveling Bran see a Night King kind of situation, right? Because it's got the others are supposed to predate the Night's King by quite a bit, but the Night's King story is still an interesting one. I mean, my idea about the Night's King story is I think it's just that he was in love with a wildling girl, but they still didn't want him like breeding with the wildlings or having an alliance, at least at minimum having an alliance with the wildlings. Like I think, like I hear the Night's King story and I'm like it just makes a lot more sense if she's a human being. Let me bring it up real quick because his name was Brandon. I'm trying to bring up the exact point in the story. Here it is. He brought her back to the Night Fort and proclaimed her king, and with strange sorceries bound the sworn brothers to his will. For 13 years they ruled, the Night's King and his corpse queen, until finally Stark of Winterfell and Jormund of the Wildlings joined to free the Watch from bondage. After his fall, he had been found to be sacrificing to the others, and all records of him had been destroyed. So it's like, I think before they say her eyes were blue, and it's like, but she then claims that she's a corpse, right? Let's see here. Hold on a second. Bringing up the previous paragraph. As the sun began to set, a woman was his downfall. A woman glimpsed from atop the wall with skin as white as the moon and eyes like blue stars. Fearing nothing, he chased her down, caught her, and loved her, though her skin was cold as ice. And when he gave her his seed, he gave her his soul as well. So, I mean, logically speaking, like, that can't be an other, because you can't have sex with an other. Your dick's going to freeze off, and it's going to be like the situation in The Boys. So then it's like, okay, maybe she's a white. It's like, okay, why would he marry a white? Like what? Because why would they care if he's fucking a white? Just kind of weird. But okay. But it makes most sense that she's just a wildling. And that he's trying some sort of like wildling alliance, and the Jorman sees this as a threat, that he's trying to become king over both the wildlings and the North, and so the North and the wildlings like team up and like try to take him out. Like that'd be my guess. And maybe the sacrificing to the others thing is he's actually giving, he's giving babies to the others. Maybe he's teaming up with the others or whatever. But I think I think it's going to be relevant because we have to, George would eventually want to reveal where the others are from and their origins and where they come from and why the sacrificing happens. Like, keep in mind, we still haven't revealed, like, in the main story, all the stuff we know from the show, like that they're transforming the babies into others or whatever. Like, all that's not revealed. And so you kind of need at least Bran to view that kind of stuff in his time travel. So I think it's something like that he was sleeping with a wildling who had special genes, and he was trying to give the babies to the others as some sort of an alliance. The point was Rhaegar was an anime protagonist, but fair. I think this is about the three-way. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how George like even feels about Rhaegar. He's described him as like the hero who died before the book was started, but he is critical of Rhaegar too. So I kind of just imagine Rhaegar as being the Jan Vickery character in Dying of the Light. That he's very concerned with the political situation and making the world like better, and that's what he's focused on. Thoughts on Jason Bourne in A Song of Ice and Fire? Is Jason Bourne in A Song of Ice and Fire? Do you know what this is about, guys?
I've never heard this.
I'm trying to.
He's secretly in every scene.
Is there a House Bourne? I'm not sure. I only have a few minutes left before I've got to. Last week, I had this like abrupt end to my stream because I realized like.
I saw that.
Yeah, well, I mean, people called it out pretty quick. They're like, "That's the look of a guy who like realized he needs to like go pick up his kid," and it's true. I needed to go relieve the helper. Isn't it weird that Ned never legitimized Jon? So Ned is unable to legitimize Jon as Lord. Only a king can legitimize Jon. And so if he were going to have a legitimization, he would have to ask Robert to do it, which is a little awkward. But say he wanted him legitimized as a Stark, then Catelyn would be upset because it would be a character who would threaten Jon's or threaten Robb's like rule. And keep in mind that Catelyn does fear Jon for this reason already, even though Jon is a bastard. Like, she specifically says not that Jon would overthrow Robb, but that Jon's children could overthrow Robb. I think in the sense that there's some weirdness about, like, if a bastard gets married and has kids, his kids are still trueborn. And so this, somehow this idea that they'd be trueborn and might be able to overthrow like Robb's kids or whatever. And so there's a question, because we're never also answered the question, who's older, Robb or Jon? Catelyn's fear makes it sound like Jon is the elder. In a sense, if you had Jon being the eldest and he has trueborn children, and Robb is younger and has children, wouldn't Jon's through primogeniture, like, he would have the eldest children in the line? It's just that Jon is a bastard and things like this. But if you were to legitimize Jon, you'd be causing massive, massive problems for the Stark Tully alliance. So you could never like legitimize him in a Stark sense, and likely not certainly not in a Targaryen sense. because that would be a threat to Robert. Dany's vision in the House of the Undying. She sees a dead man with a wolf's head holding up a leg of lamb. Wendell Manderly is mentioned 5 times in book 3, 3 of which he mentions with a leg of lamb. Coincidence? Huh. That's an interesting one. So
Heard that one before. Yeah.
there are if you go through the House of the Undying visions, all of them are off quite a bit. For instance, when she sees a vision of her father, he's described as an old man, and the Mad King Aerys was not an old man, or Rhaegar is seen in the bedroom with Elia, but they slept in separate bedrooms. Little things like this, and you can have the different explanations. Well, maybe he went down to her bedroom or whatever, but or maybe he just looked old. Okay, but there's a lot of like little changes, and so like the Red Wedding is one of them. Where if you look at the description of the Red Wedding in A Clash of Kings, it's not exactly what's going on in at the Red Wedding when it actually comes. Like one of the weird things is like this is the actual things. Farther down, she came upon a feast of corpses, savagely slaughtered. The feasters lay strewn across chairs and hacked trestle tables, a sprawl in pools of congealed blood. Some had lost limbs, even heads. Severed hands clutched bloody cups, wooden spoons, roast fowl, heels of bread. In a throne above them sat a dead man with a head of a wolf. He wore an iron crown and held a leg of lamb in one hand, as a king might hold a scepter, and his eyes followed her with mute appeal. And you're like, well, what the fuck is mute appeal? And I guess the heel of bread is supposed to be some sort of metaphorical reference to the feast being kind of meager, because Catelyn makes a reference to it being like not a great feast. So like the heel of the bread being like the cheap part of the bread, I guess. But you can see that it's like somewhat metaphorical. I don't understand like what mute appeal is. Let me see here. I'll post a mute appeal. Like to appeal as in like he's saying something urgently. It's a heartfelt request, like a serious heartfelt request, like quietly. And like what would Rob be needing to say, did the Red Wedding, did they really hack everybody up? Like limbs being cut off, or did they just stab everybody? Like a lot of little weird things about it. But nonetheless, leg of lamb, Wendell Manderly, could he become king of the North? I mean, it's logical. I don't think George would actually make Wendell Manderly the king of the North. Mainly because it's like the Manderleys demanded Rickon, and so if you're going to get Rickon to get their support, then you're going to deal with Rickon rather than.
Preston, you're so nice to like. By the way, I thank you, Glidus, for coming on. I gave me some chance to do laundry. You're so nice, entertaining like these random ass fucking questions that like this dude probably got from a shitty minor Game of Thrones YouTuber. Like, you're so nice. You're so fucking nice.
No, I mean these things hint on stuff that people talk about quite a bit.
Like no one talks about this. Like Glidus will tell you, like he gets some dumbass comments all the time. Like, yo, bro, I think Tyrion's the Night King. Like, no, that's
not. These are definitely more worth talking about than that.
Or that Daemon's the Night King, even though we saw the Night King in the show, but
That's canon, Carmine. Like, just stop denying it.
How will Stannis die? I think it might have something to do with like him underestimating Ramsay. Just it seems really weird that Stannis like speaks ill of him. Like, why should I fear this guy? So I think there might be something later, that would have Stannis die. And that would be my guess. But I'm not sure if the fanfic will change it. But it's a long way off before we get to that. Preston just moved to DC and don't really know anybody. Any advice on how to meet people? Love your content. There's a lot of sports leagues that are fun that you can join, like softball leagues. Kickball was huge for a long time in DC. I don't know if it's too hip anymore, but there's a lot of sports leagues that you can join and meet people. Adult sports leagues for people in their 20s, 30s. There's even people in their 40s that play in them. But anything else going on with you guys, Carmine and Glidus, before I go? Any exciting things to announce? By the way, Glidus, I'm happy you just got over COVID. My mother, I just got a message today. My mother has COVID.
Oh, sucks.
What? I thought it was a Chinese hoax. What is this? What's happening? What? No. How? Jesus. By the way,
Preston's
Glidus, when
mom
you had
is
COVID, I
in
already
on
told
it.
you this.
I know. It just makes me wonder, like, what Glidus and my mom have been doing.
Glidus, when you got COVID, like everyone I know from like that area of Australia where you're from got it. My boy Vince, who lives around that area, he got it too.
Yeah.
Like it literally. Was there like a huge boom in your area when that happened?
I think that was around that time. Everyone went out to Halloween parties and got sick, I guess. Like that episode of Community.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Where they all get the zombie virus or whatever.
Yeah, that's right. This
Said,
guy knows
"Glidus,
what I'm
another game
talking
show.
about.
Please do.
My mom is supposed to go to on a
might.
trip to New Zealand in 2 weeks, so hopefully she'll get better for that. But
You don't have COVID, do you?
COVID.
Oh, I sure hope you don't have COVID.
You gotta go to this bar. There's a great dick. There's a great dick bar. Dick bar. We got
All
this
right.
dick. This dick's
We can stop for fashion chops on the way.
chips. Chips. The best dicks. The thing is, a lot of bars in Wellington have decks, and they all advertise their great decks. And so a lot of they'll be like, "Oh, we've got the best dick in Wellington." I can't.
Come on down. We've got the biggest dick in town.
I recently was watching. By the way, our accents of New Zealand are completely different. I was just watching. There's an HBO show called Los Spookies, and it's Spanish language. And there's one character who's supposed to be speaking Spanish with an American accent, but I don't hear it at all. They're all like, "What's wrong? Like, why do you talk funny?" And she's like, "I did a study abroad in Minnesota for 2 weeks. I came back talking like this, but I didn't learn any English." And they're like, but she doesn't sound like she has an American accent to me. Like, she just sounds like she just sounds like she's actually just speaking Mexican Spanish, I'm like, oh, okay. All right. Thank you for joining me, Glidus. Thank you for joining me, Carmine. Sorry for any super chats I didn't get to at the end. We'll talk about this next time. But I'll see you all later. Thanks again. Finish.